Good morning and welcome, FIT students, faculty, and industry guests. The idea for this event began more than a year ago when Lily Barelovich, founder of Fashion Snoops, and I were discussing how we can best prepare the next generation, our students, to successfully meet the creative and business demands of fashion and its related industries. Within FIT's strategic plan, we address the need to marry creativity to business by moving forward with new and innovative curriculum and by creating initiatives to introduce flexible global programming across multiple disciplines, including design, communication, liberal arts, merchandising, and multi-channel retail business. Today, we will host presentations and panels comprising cutting-edge industry executives to speak about the new creative. Our event was organized with the help of a team of dedicated FIT library personnel, including Greta Ernest, Associate Director of the FIT Library. Here to continue the conversation is my friend and colleague, the founder and Chief Creative Officer of Fashion Snoops, Lily Barelovich.
Okay, so it's way too dark. All I could see is bright lights in my face, but I'll try to keep it personal even though I can't see you. So first of all, thank you FIT for hosting us, and thank you for all of these lovely members who I'll name every single one of you at the end for making this possible for us. As Nancy said, this idea came about a year ago. We are in constant conversation about change in our industry. Everything seems different, how we do things seems different, the new creatives that are coming into the workplaces are different. So our goal for this event was not to just discuss the different, but to give you an example of what's different and share personal experiences of the people who will be on stage here, how they've done it, what they believe in, what they stand behind, and how they're bringing change forward. Some of you are still trickling in, so it's a full-on day of, not a full-on half a day, although it'll go really fast, of different panels that we put together from all different perspectives of sharing points that we want to bring forward. So I think you'll be excited to see some of the conversations that are going to be had in the room. I want to start with the first panel. There'll be more of me. You'll get sick of me by the end of the day. I want to start with our first panel, and it's interesting how this whole day came together. You know, we had an intention or who we wanted to have here, and then things organically formed into how it showed up for today's presentations. We came across this amazing company called Greats through our research a while back, and we loved their approach with retail, direct-to-consumer, and loved how they've niched out a specific market of sneakers and really focused on it. We've invited Ryan Babenzian to speak today, and he will be interviewed by Steve Duell, Deputy Style Editor from Complex Magazine. So I'd like to welcome them to the stage and hope to hear some of their personal stories and how Ryan has put his company together. Come on in. And wherever you want, since you
Can I sit over
you
here?
can sit there, but then that will be an intimate conversation. So I'm going to hand you guys off. Enjoy.
Do we need mics?
The mics work right in front of you. Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning, everybody.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Just catching my breath. I was a little late, but I got here, so we're ready to go.
New York MTA.
Exactly. Always reliable. Cool. So we're going to talk a little bit about getting closer to brands, which obviously Greats and Ryan have done really well. Or sorry, getting closer to the consumer. Excuse me. But I thought we could start out by just sort of talking about how you came up with the concept for Greats and a little bit about the philosophy behind the brand. And just sort of like, you know, what the overall concept is.
Yeah, I mean, we had been thinking about the idea for a while before we launched it, probably about almost 2 years. And it was really out of necessity. We just started to see these problems with the way brands and retailers were struggling. Young brands in particular were having the biggest problem with being wholesale, in the fact that, you know, if a retailer doesn't pay you, that will affect your entire business. It just throws off your cash flow. You're relying on getting paid on time so you can place your next order for the next season and so on. And that was just a problem happening across the industry, not just footwear. So we started to think about, well, what if we built a direct-to-consumer sneaker brand? And what were the benefits of it and what were the cons? And there was a lot of pros and cons to it. But that's how the idea came about. And I was working at a footwear brand at the time. I was a head of entertainment marketing at Puma. So I understood the space, and we understood the sneaker market. So we weren't business school guys trying to figure out how to find some white space and start a company where opportunity was. We were like sneaker guys that were looking to make it better. And after that, once we decided to do it, we wrote a deck. This is a freak story. We went out for our first fundraising meeting, and the guy, in like 2 minutes into the meeting, was like, "Where do I send the check?" And we didn't have a bank account. Like, that's how, we didn't have a bank account. We hadn't even incorporated the company. We had 10 pages on a deck, and 3 weeks later, we were fully funded, and we quit our jobs, and we started the company.
Wow. So that's rare, though. That's not.
That is, I've never heard a story like that.
Yeah.
But I think what it said was, not only was the idea really good, and there was other companies in the market that were doing what we were doing for other products. So, Warby was doing glasses, Everlane was doing
Sure.
T-shirts, Bonobos was doing khakis, and we thought sneakers, big opportunity. And I think that the reason we were able to do that so quickly is because we understood the space really well, and there was nobody doing it. So the opportunity was really big.
So if you had to do it again, what would be sort of the first step that you would take? Would you, aside from getting a bank account?
Right. Well, we had raised that first seed round and launched within 5 months. So we didn't have a silhouette, we didn't have a factory, we didn't have a prototype, we didn't have a bank account. And we didn't have a website. I would do that differently.
Just living on a dream.
Yeah, that was we wanted to launch by back to school. So we wanted to launch in August, and we were just committed to that date, because if we didn't, we felt that was the best opportunity to launch and get the most awareness with no money.
Yeah.
And if we didn't do it at that time, we would have had to wait till the following year, and we just didn't want to wait. But I would do that differently. I would have tried to plan a little bit more ahead.
So aside from that, was there any decision, now you have the funding, you're ready to roll, was there anything in the beginning that you weren't anticipating, a decision you'd have to make?
Everything. Like literally everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you make all these assumptions, and then you build your plan, and then the best advice I would give to anybody is just be prepared to that entire plan to change almost every day. And when we launched, this was another kind of crazy story. We were 2 hours late, so all the press was like, launching at noon, and the website wasn't done. So it's out in Women's Wear Daily, it's in Complex, it's in Hypebeast, it's all over the place, and it's 1:30 in the afternoon, and the site's not even up. And we were getting like text messages from people we knew, like, where's the site? So the site goes up around 2:15 in the afternoon, and from that second till the end of the night, we sold a pair of shoes every 90 seconds on average.
Wow.
We were not prepared for that. We were majorly not prepared for that. American Express didn't work for the first 2 weeks, roughly. So we lost like all the sales from Amex. People were trying to buy with Amex and they couldn't because it wasn't processing right. Basically, you're just not prepared for any of it, really. You just have to jump in.
Yeah.
And in vertical businesses, but there's a little bit, in a brand new vertical launch is like, it's the Wild West when you launch the site. You never really anticipate you never know what's going to happen, and just be prepared to change and adapt. And that's what we started to do.
Yeah. So you mentioned like brands like Everlane and Warby Parker who have a similar direct-to-retail approach. And I know one term that's kind of thrown about a lot when we talk about that is this idea of disrupting the industry and disrupting the typical kind of retail flow. What does that actually mean from in a practical sense? That idea of disruption.
I mean, the definition, right, of disruption is changing the norm, really, right? So for us, it's completely disrupting the supply chain, where we're not wholesaling to retailers, and we're selling direct, right? So that is a disruption in and of itself. More importantly to the customer, what that allows us to do is make a made-in-Italy sneaker or hybrid and sell it for a quarter of our competitors. And that's a big disruption. Price disruption is probably the most appealing thing about Greats and other vertical brands, because in the end, the customer gets a premium product at a value price. So that model then is disruptive. So you have disrupt the supply chain, disrupt the model, disrupt the price, and all of it really comes down to the customer. We want to make the best product we can for the best price to the consumer, and we feel the only way to do that is being a vertical brand. So,
all right, so let's talk about that pricing structure, because that is a big selling point, obviously, for Greats. So if we use the sneaker, the Bablo, which I'm going to go out on a limb and say is named after you.
It is.
Okay,
I didn't name it, though, but it's named after me.
So that's $59 when you sell it on your website direct to the retailer. So what would that look like if it were somewhere like Barney's or Urban Outfitters or something like that?
Yeah, so we comp that shoe against shoes that are about $120, so it's about half. And frankly, we don't get to make the shoe for less. Like, we're probably actually it costs us more to make it because we don't have the volume of, say, a Nike or an Adidas. So we're paying premiums on our production because we don't have 100,000 per color. So we probably pay a little more. We're able to sell it for less, though, because that markup that comes from wholesaling is completely eliminated. So we actually have a slightly higher margin than all the legacy brands in our industry. So when I say legacy, I mean Nike, Puma, Adidas, so on. But the customer still pays about half the price. So that's a really compelling business opportunity.
Sure. And pricing is only part of it, right? You're also, because you're speaking directly to the consumer, you have that relationship that you might not have if you were communicating with them mostly through a third-party retailer.
Yeah, we think that's super critical. I think any brand that becomes a successful brand has an emotional relationship with their customer as well as a real one, like an active one. And in today's world, it's as easy as ever to start a brand because of the internet. It's hard because there's a ton of noise. There's just the flow of information is so fast that what would happen in a fashion trend 100 years ago, which would take 5 years to trend through, now happens in months, right? So you have, and information is the cause of that, right? We put out a sneaker, you guys write about it, and every single guy that's into sneakers in the world at that second knows about it. That didn't happen pre-internet, right? You would discover things. There was a gestation period for brands, and you got to manipulate your brand through scarcity and positioning and time. You don't have that anymore. So that's good and bad. Like, it works. It's a double-edged sword, but yeah.
Yeah. So how are you communicating with them? What kind of channels are you using to reach your consumers? Obviously social media, but is there one that you find to be more effective for a sneaker brand in particular?
We're interesting in that we have a millennial-based audience who is a mobile native. Like, if you're a millennial, you likely had a cell phone by the time you were 15. So generationally, that's brand new. Like, this is the first generation that grew up with mobile. Our mobile business is super critical for us, and it's what's really exciting because a lot of guys just come on their phone and buy it. That's kind of a first-time thing, like what we're seeing now in the opportunity, because mobile commerce will dwarf e-commerce as a rule. We communicate every way. We communicate social, every channel. We communicate direct email. We communicate SMS. We're seeing results on text messaging over email that's unprecedented.
It's like, who is answering these messages?
Well, there's no answer. It's just an update, right?
Oh,
so it's
okay.
like, hey, we have a new sneaker. And you gave me your cell number instead of your email. You prefer
Right.
to be communicated to that way.
Okay, so it's not like someone being like,
No, but we're about to
Right.
do that. So like we think messengering, messenger apps in Asia right now are how you buy things, right? If you go into China and you want to buy stuff, you go into your messenger app and you can buy stuff. The announcement 2 weeks ago of Facebook Commerce,
Yeah.
which is going to be powered by their messenger, is probably where we see the most opportunity in the near future. We're agnostic to channels, to be honest. Like, I don't care if you want like smoke signals, I'll tell you that we have a new sneaker. But what's fun is we get to stay on the edge of technology and move really quickly because we're a startup and we're young and we're nimble. We have an audience that wants us to be that way, and that's a huge advantage over kind of older, bigger organizations that just don't move that fast.
so how, when it comes to then like assigning people or hiring people rather to do that, I mean, how much of that, how much time do you spend training them, and how hard is it to kind of let go of those reins a little bit? Because it's more than one person or you and your business partner can do together to be in constant communication with your consumer in the way that I think a lot of people are interacting with brands.
Yeah, I mean, we're a small company. People think we're this giant organization at this point. We're not. We're going to be 2 years old in June, and we have 10 people. We have a guy that manages email, a guy that manages customer service, a guy, like, or a girl, like they're one person.
Yeah.
And we're building out the team. I mean, we're not going to be that way forever, but that's where up until now, that's how we've gotten there. And, you know, we just look for people that have had some experience. Like the guy that runs our email was at Gilt. You know, we're looking for the
He's
best.
like, I'm really good at email.
He's really good at email. That's
Yeah.
what he does. That's what he did at Gilt for 4 years. You know, he understands. And email is not pretty pictures alone. There's a lot of data analysis that goes into it. There's a lot of segmentation. This is a very complex strategy that there's the art part, which is super critical, and that creative matters so much, and you need good creative. But the back end of that is equally as important. So putting out good creative and not understanding segmentation, like, I don't want to send you an email of a shoe that you probably wouldn't like. And we know by your behavior of what you're interested in, so we should focus on that. I also don't want to send you an email of a hiking boot in the summer, right? So like there's a lot of thought that goes into how to optimize a customer's experience. We also don't want to bother you. Like people, I unsubscribe from almost every company because they just send too many emails. I don't want to be bothered every single day with every 40% off sale every single second. Like it just bothers me, so I've turned them all off. We try to be aware of that and knowing that, you know, customers don't want to be annoyed. They want to be informed, but we don't have to send them 10 emails a week.
Yeah. So how, I mean, when you are talking specifically about social media, I mean, how closely, it happens so quickly. So how far in advance are you planning, you know, a tweet or an Instagram post? Or is it a little bit more loose than that?
The guy that's doing it now used to work at Complex.
Yes.
There's some planning, and
Yeah.
then there's some, you know, flexibility, right? And I think we have kind of these tent poles of sneaker releases, really relevant, planned announcements. And then there's just the freelance stuff, which is probably 30%. You know, if something happens that's relevant in our culture, we want to be active. So that would happen day of. If, you know, Prince dies, which is, you know, unfortunate, but we want to, you know, you've got to be nimble and stay current. And I think that's what's important about social media, is maintaining relevancy, and each channel is actually different. You know, what happens on Twitter and what happens on Facebook and what happens on Snapchat and what happens on Pinterest and what happens on Instagram, they're all different. They're all related to our brand and they all connect in some way and there's a tone, but each channel is different and people go there for different reasons, and we're aware of that, and good brands treat them differently.
Sure. So getting back to what you were saying earlier about how the creative, is also closely tied in and so important. How much of your job or of the average employee that you have of the 10, how much of that time is divided between really kind of business-oriented stuff and being a little bit more creative? Because I think oftentimes there's some pressure to kind of go one way or the other when you're thinking, especially about first starting out in the industry.
Personally, for me, I am not spending enough time on the creative part of what we do, which is unfortunate because it's a function of the bandwidth of the team, and where, as the founder CEO, I'm responsible for fundraising and board meetings and all this stuff that's really not that fun, but a necessary part of driving the business. My goal is to get back to the more creative stuff because I'm a marketer by nature. That's what I do. And I think successful brands have to be really good at marketing. And if you look at the best brands in the world, great product is table stakes. Like, you need to make great stuff. Marketing that stuff is then how you become Nike. And we are a marketing powered organization. So I need to spend more time on the creative stuff, and hiring more people to take some of my business duties off will be helpful. As a team, not everybody's hired to do creative. So, but the people that are on the creative time, they spend most of their day on that.
Sure. So yeah, let's talk about hiring some new employees since we have some students in the audience. What are some of the characteristics you look for when you're looking for a new employee?
Yeah, it depends on the level of of role. But for out of school, we have an intern that interned 2 summers, and he's starting this June. So he goes to Harvard, and he loves sneakers. So he emailed us 2 summers ago, and we gave him an internship. Then he wanted to come back the second summer, and he was just a sponge. Like, he knows sneakers, but he didn't know anything about e-commerce, and he didn't know anything about our business. So then he got a paid internship, and now he's got a job. What we look for is people that are passionate about what we do and want to learn. And it's the basic things your parents tell you, like show up on time, don't be an asshole. It's true. Like, we're building a team, and any great company is a team. So, and like in sports, like if you have a great quarterback, if he just doesn't fit into the team, it doesn't matter how good he is. He just doesn't play well on that team because they run a different offense. If you're a total asshole, I don't care how talented you are. You could be the best artist in the world. If nobody wants to work with you, you're going to have a hard time and a difficult time building a career out of that. So, talent, obviously, we want super talented A+ players, but they have to be, manageable. They have to work with them amongst their peers, because if they're just alienating everybody, it's not going to work.
Yeah. And your company is called Greats, so they got a lot of pressure to live up to there. Do you, let's talk about that actually. How did you kind of come up with, how did you settle on that name, I should say?
So we were doing that, traditional naming exercise where we were writing all these names on a list, and we're like, hundreds, and they'd get crossed off, and this greatest, there was all these kind of names around great popping up, and then it kept staying on the list. And ultimately what we kept, our design philosophy is, we're going to pick the greatest silhouettes in men's footwear and design our versions of them, right? So we're going to take a desert boot, classic silhouette, and then put it on a running bottom. That idea of how we design our product, and if you think about the footwear industry, and specifically sneakers, there is a common silhouette across every single brand. Like, everybody's got a retro runner, everybody's got a lightweight runner, everybody's got a high top, everybody's got a court shoe, everybody's got a rubber cap toe shoe. Every brand has a version or an iteration of that, and that was our thesis. Like, we're going to take these silhouettes and then design our versions of them. So that's how the name Greats came.
Sure. How are we doing on time? Are we okay still? Okay. So let's
We've got hours.
We're
Nobody
here.
else
Get
is coming. It's just you and me all day.
All right. Well, so then let's talk a little bit more about reaching this consumer. So obviously you're not using traditional retail, the traditional retail model, sold primarily online. Are you thinking about retail expansion and that sort of thing as another way to interact with the consumer?
Yeah, so we love retail. We hate wholesale. There's a difference. Like, we think retail is the best way to get customers, the best way to tell your brand story, the best way for a customer to experience your brand. We think wholesale is the problem. And I mean, it's, you know, I'm no rocket scientist to say that. If you look at the state of retail today, you're seeing just trouble globally at every level, at luxury, at maybe not fast fashion. Those guys are actually killing it.
Yeah,
but
they're kind of unstoppable.
But retail works. It's the wholesale. And the fast fashion, though, if you think about it, is a vertical business. Right? So Zara and Uniqlo are vertical. They work.
Right.
Retail works. So we are going to open great stores. And we even do some kind of partnerships here and there. Like, we've done collaborations with United Arrows in Japan. That was a wholesale relationship. We have one wholesale relationship with Mr. Porter. We sell them product and they resell it. And the way we justify that is Mr. Porter, we think, is the best luxury e-commerce site in the world. It's brand elevating for us, and they're great customers that we're trying to reach. So for us, it's more about a customer acquisition strategy than it is a revenue strategy. There's great revenue to it, but that's not why we do it.
Sure.
So, and we may do one of those in a bigger way in brick and mortar, because I think there are some retailers that are still, you know, healthy and solvent and pay on time and good for brands. So we get approached by all of them, frankly. We've been approached by everybody from Bergdorf to the Gap. At some point, we may figure out the right way to work with a big box retailer, not a big box retailer, but a retailer that we would think aligns with our brand and be in those stores in some capacity.
And then on the other side, you've also worked with Nick Wooster. How did that, do you guys all know who Nick Wooster is? He's this kind of menswear icon, street style star,
He's
retailer.
a celebrity.
He's done everything, yeah.
In China, he's a celebrity.
Yeah.
He's like, they have a name for him. They call him Fashion Uncle. Yeah, and he was on the cover of Taiwan GQ last month.
Right. I saw
So
that.
he's a bona fide celeb in the men's space for sure.
Sure. So how did that partnership come about?
I was friends with Nick first, and then we don't consider ourselves a fashion brand. We're a style brand, but we understand why we get lumped into fashion. But we don't follow fashion rules in any way. Nick's a very fuck you guy. Like, he's a renegade, you know, and he also is super informed about what's happening around the world in fashion, which for us was going to be, you know, really insightful intel. And he's super influential. So we have a real not just, hey, you're my friend, do this. He's part of the company, he has a vested interest in the company to help be an ambassador for the brand. We're on our fourth collection with him. He does a collection with an Italian luxury brand called Lardini, and it's Wooster for Lardini, and we do all the footwear for that. And you know, that there's an example of where we go outside of our norm. You know, that's sold at Barney's in Barney's Japan and luxury retailers around the world. And we let those guys sell it, but it's great for greats because it's a marketing vehicle. So we don't look at it as like, how much money can we make off of that? We say, how smart is this marketing, and will it cost us any money to do it? And it doesn't. It actually, you know, any marketer, if they can get revenue positive on a marketing exercise, you're going to get a raise.
Yeah. And obviously he also speaks to this kind of consumer who's very internet friendly and kind of raised and learns on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, he's got 600,000 followers on Instagram.
Yeah.
And he's been in the industry for a long time. He's been at Polo, he's been at Bergdorf. He was hired by, you know, it didn't work out, but he was hired by the CEO of JCPenney's at the time, who came from Apple, Ron Johnson was brought on to turn around JCPenney's, and he hired Nick to be the head of men's. And frankly, like, what they were doing was the right thing, but being a public company and the board and all that stuff, they were like, hey, in a year you didn't turn around this company, so you guys are all fired. But what he was doing and his vision of how to turn around JCPenney's, I think, was the right vision. Unfortunately, a publicly traded company just has different pressures, and they didn't have enough time to execute their plan. But yeah, he's like the Michael Jordan of men's fashion, for sure.
And the least likely guy, I feel like, in some ways.
Yeah, he's from Kansas.
Well, there you go. Yeah. All right, so what's next for Greats? What can we look forward to?
We're hiring. Anybody got their resume? Yeah, I mean, look, we're growing. You know, we're in our second year. We're finally adding some women's sizes, and that was a big thing I didn't expect.
Sure.
You know, we had always said we're going to be a men's focused brand, and we are. But after about a year and a half of getting essentially hate mail from women, like, why don't you make this in women's? Why don't you make this in women's? We were like, okay, we're going to make some smaller sizes. And that doesn't mean we're a women's brand all of a sudden. That means that, you know, like Chuck Taylor, which is a men's shoe that goes down to a boy's 4, we're making smaller sizes of unisex styles. So we're not going to become a women's focused brand, but we certainly have shoes that they want to wear, and that's new. We're expanding the team. We're building the business. I mean, that's what we're doing, and it's both gratifying and really difficult. Like, it's hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, for sure, which I didn't expect.
Great. Well, that's great.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Oh, liar.
So we have the opportunity for some Q&A because our next speaker, Ariel Donet, got really sick and will not be joining us. So I know we've always wanted some Q&A time. This is the opportunity that we have. I'm going to have some people come up. So any questions directed at Ryan and we will run up some mics up to you, and then we'll.
Somebody better ask us a question.
There's going to be some smart questions here, I know it. Great.
This is my Instagram moment, actually.
Let me take a picture of you on the stage with the backdrop.
I think my girlfriend did that already. Oh, that. Oh, wow, I didn't even see that. That's pretty good. Who built that?
Hi. Congratulations on all your success.
Thank you.
I'm very curious on that first hour that your site opened and you said you were selling a pair of sneakers every 90 seconds. How long in advance did you start creating a buzz? And other than so, was all the buzz created on social media? And where did you start? I mean, just to, say, hey, I got this brand, great, and you flood social media, doesn't bring you all the followers. Now, you come from Puma, so I'm wondering, did you get hold of a lot of their social media lists? Did you go after Puma
That would be
people?
illegal.
I know it would. So I know that. So,
That wasn't the question.
No, the answer is no. That's a hard no.
Okay. So
No.
so how did you go from nothing to when you opened your website, 2 hours late to this, barrage of people who wanted to buy your product?
It's a great question. We didn't spend any money on marketing for the first 10 months, not $1, not because we didn't want to, we just didn't have it. So we had built a social media following and we focused on Instagram only, to be honest. We didn't have time. At that time, it was just 2 of us. And there was also no product, right? So we had launched our Instagram feed in May. We were launching in August. We didn't even have a sample to show until July. So from May till July, we built this Instagram feed
selfies.
with no, yeah, it was just me. And no, we didn't even show the sneaker. By the time we launched, we had 10,000 followers. And we got press on launch day. And press in every single endemic street style site, sneaker site. And that's how we launched. Press is probably our most important marketing tool we have. And you're welcome. And my head of publicity and communications is sitting up there. So you can thank that guy. You know, we have the ability to get lots of press based on our model. So we release a style or a color update or a restock almost every 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks, the press is going to write about us. So those are like the sneaker stories. Then there's the bigger stories and the business stories. So we're getting press all the time, and we're able to maintain line of sight into the customer all the time. That's really unique. Like fashion brands in general don't get press every 2 weeks. So that's how we did it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, how are you feeling about the whole, you said you started to do women's sizes and stuff like that, but how are you feeling about the whole unisex movement or fearless clothing? Do you think, I mean, it's always been kind of like that for footwear in general, like Vans or like big companies like that, but how do you feel about that in general across fashion, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we don't.
As far as, I'm sorry, as far as like being like a movement, as far as like things progressing in fashion.
I mean, I think it's great. I don't dictate like how people should dress. I think what we do is observe and make sure we make relevant products for what's ever happening in the world or the season on a classic silhouette. So that sounds like we might follow trend, but we don't. But we're certainly aware of them. And if, you know, wider pant legs are coming into play, which they are, that means that shoes are probably going to get higher and higher and higher, which they are. So our thinner silhouette sneaker may not be as relevant as a fatter soled sneaker, and we'll adapt to that. We're not impervious to trend movements, and we're also not, you know, stupid to not be, you know, we need to play in what's happening in the world, and we actually have an advantage to do that because we don't have these long development cycles. We can put in a product from design into market in 5 months. So that allows us to actually benefit for any moves that would really happen.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Being a casual style brand, what's the priority of innovation and performance, especially when it comes to the active world for your footwear?
Yeah, so we're not a technical brand. We're a style brand, casual brand. We actually have technical things in some of our shoes. We make a trail runner shoe that's on a Vibram trail runner bottom that's used by North Face and Merrell and a bunch of other high performance technical companies. We don't position our brand that way though. So could you go trail running in it? Yeah. That's not our position. And the reason for that is we think most technical product is actually worn for style. And, you know, most Nike basketball shoes never see a court, and most Nike Flyknits are never getting run in, but they look really cool, and that's why people buy them. So that's kind of our thesis on technical. And, you know, I'm not saying we'll never do technical product. We may. But for now, we're happy to just be a style-based business.
Question. You are an entrepreneur, so obviously you're a dreamer. A genie is going to give you 3 wishes that will come true in the next 12 months. What do you want to wish for?
That's a wow. I hope we close our next round of funding very quickly. I hope my girlfriend doesn't leave me in the meantime. And what's the third one?
It can be about me. That's okay.
I hope Steve lives to follow his dream.
Me too.
What is your dream, Steve?
Oh, we got 20 more minutes?
We got plenty of time. This is an interview for a new TV show, by the way.
Oh, right.
And you're the new host.
Right. Well, in that case, we've got some paternity tests to do. We've got a long way to go.
God, these lights are so bright.
So bright.
I can't see anybody.
Ryan, you got a question up here.
Who's that?
Doesn't matter. Hi. You made a great comment before. You asked the rhetorical question, are you a fashion brand or a style brand? If you wanted to give that some sort of tangible narrative in terms of what the difference is, how would you speak to that?
I mean, fashion, fashion does a lot of things differently, and they do it for the show of it all, I think, and the function of the business is traditionally wholesale based. I think every fashion brand is actually changing into a vertical brand, or at least trying to get closer to their customer. We don't follow trends. We don't do runway shows. We don't sell to retailers. I mean, those are three pretty big differences on how we behave differently from a traditional fashion business, and don't put ourselves in the fashion category. We follow fashion, and we even have some fashionable things. Like when I say fashion, it's like this fashion color of spring is not going to be a color next year. So should we invest our entire line in one color of one season just because it's fashionable? No, we don't think we should. We leave that to fashion businesses. We're happy to kind of live on the periphery of what's happening around fashion and still maintain some relevancy.
So if Great's a style brand, how does that affect the ideation time or that part of your product development? How does being a style brand affect your ideation process versus being a fashion brand? What's the difference?
Well, the difference is we're not slaves to the cycles of fashion trend. We get to play in the macro and not on the micro. And I think micro trending is harmful for brands that are starting, for sure. I'm not even sure it's good for big businesses that are established. If you think about like I relate fashion to trend. Maybe I'm using the term incorrectly, but there was a wedge sneaker for women that came out 5 years ago. That company is all but gone, right? That was a moment and a trend in fashion that everybody had to have that style sneaker, and then it was gone. We never want to be that, ever. And those are the things that, fashion tends to have an effect on. Like, this is fashionable right now, and then it's not, and it's gone. So we don't want to do that. We want to be around in 40 years and make sure that we're not a fashion trend that goes in and out.
I think also from an outside perspective, there's a certain timelessness to your designs, but also they're meant to complement your personal style and not sort of lead your personal style, if that makes sense. So your consumers are wearing the sneakers. The sneakers aren't wearing them, if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, that's true, and I think that should be the case for everybody in any brand. I mean, nobody should...
But it's not always the case.
No, it's not, unfortunately. I just got back from Italy. I was in Italy last week, and I'm in this store called Excelsior, and there's these 3 dudes from Asia. No, I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but like, they had every single brand in streetwear from the top to the bottom. And to me, that's not a style. That's not a style. That's just a brand buying, wearing. It looked terrible. And they've got every meaningful streetwear brand on their body at the same exact time.
Yes, which I saw because you put it on Instagram and tagged
did.
Complex in it.
Well, I tagged Complex in it because you guys did a series on fuck boys. Sorry. And... like they were that.
Yeah, no, definitely. We got it. We got the joke.
I know you got it.
I think we have time for one more question.
So you mentioned that you want to be here for the longevity and really be a sustainable brand. And how in tune are you with this idea of sustainability? And last Sunday was Fashion Revolution, Who Made My Clothes? Are you do you think your consumers care about who are making your shoes, from social compliance to the supply chain to the materials that you're using?
We're not an eco-friendly brand. We don't take that position. I think it's really important. It's not our business. We feel like we try to do the right thing. I mean, we're not out promoting that we're saving the world. We use leathers and suede, and tanning is not. There are probably more environmentally friendly ways to tan, and we should probably look into those. But at this point, we don't. We're using the traditional methods that they use in Italy for years. I think that we definitely want to work in factories that we are proud to work in, which we do. But we don't promote that as a marketing story because it's just not our position as a brand. I think there's other brands that are doing that, and that's how they position their business. But yeah, we're aware of our ability to be responsible, and we should be getting better as we grow our business, and I'd like to think that we would.
Great, thank you.
So for our next panel, the creative vision, launching your own brand, features two duos. We have Michael and Nicole Kolovos, creative directors for Kolovos, and Jay Perrier, creative director of Kinfolk, Keith Abrams, managing director at Kinfolk, and the panel will be moderated by Daniel Konachek, director of global partnerships at Janu Pacter.
Hey everybody, how are you guys? Heather, thank you so much. Also want to thank Lily and Fashion Snoops just for the opportunity to discuss this dawning area of what I think is the new creative. For me, I feel really strongly that more than ever we're in the time of where creativity is really kind of coming to the fore, whether it's actual hands-on making things, designing, self-expression, or just a way of thinking, solving a problem. Creativity is on the rise and people are taking notice, which is super exciting. And in thinking about this panel, launching your own business, I know there's so many different directions that we could go. So for me, I kind of wanted to hone in on what I think are 5 key aspects. And 5 I think is important because it's the number of balance. It was also Coco Chanel's favorite number, which you can't go wrong with Chanel, right? So for me, the key aspects are create, collaborate, compromise, connect, and convince. So I really kind of just wanted to start by asking you guys, where do you find inspiration? Start with Jay.
Good morning. So I'm Jay Perry from Kinfolk. Inspiration usually is when I have more time for myself. In New York it's difficult because we're all very busy with the shop and the brand and everything that we've been doing the past 3 years. So mostly is when I travel, I have more time to reflect and take time to plan future creative projects. Playing always a good time, especially if you can sleep. And when I'm in different city, also I have more time to go shopping, vintage shopping, do eat some museum, some new restaurant, and also you have an open mind when you travel, so that helps digest new idea and bringing those ideas back to New York is always something I've been.
Keep it in your.
Yeah, I think like part of the Kinfolk brand ethos was the idea of getting out and seeing the world and also being a part of New York street culture and kind of bringing those two together. like some of my biggest influences are, basketball, rap music, and then when you mix that with the international kind of community that we feel like we're a part of, being that our company started in Tokyo, we were all based in Tokyo, like bringing those two worlds together really kind of creates something interesting.
And how about you guys?
Yeah, hello. For me, I find it, everywhere. I know that sounds cliche, but for me, it comes in a lot of unexpected places, not necessarily when I'm looking for it, but just, through everyday life and just being aware of like the little things that sort of pop up. I find it the things that resonate with me are things that are experiential and they seem to stay with me and filter into what we do. Or what I do creatively, as opposed to, it comes from everywhere, food, art, just little things that you see on the street, or, the way somebody wears a shirt or something. I mean, it comes from everywhere.
I agree with morning. I agree with Michael. I think for us, inspiration can just come from seeing somebody walking down the street and the way they put things together, the way they mix things up. Combined with art, combined with fabric, could be just, it comes from anywhere in all different places, as long as you're open to it and you're aware of your surroundings. I think everywhere, everything is an influence.
And in keeping with that, how do you remain open? Do you guys have rituals or anything that you do to get into the zone of your creativity? Or what do you say to remind yourself, be open, be aware, it's everywhere, look?
Well, I think that's, for me, that's sort of a misconception of the design process, to think that you have time to put aside to be creative. Once you start a business and things get rolling, it's like an avalanche and you don't really have time to step aside. And I think very few people can create that world for themselves, very lucky few. I think it's just hard work is 99% of creativity, and there's 1% of those little, pixie dust things that float around that you grab onto. But I think just working and being, the process is a big part of the creative sort of experience, is just doing the work and being consistent.
And for you guys, do you have a way to shepherd yourself back into?
I try to take notes and write down thoughts and things like that, but at the end of the day, deadline means everything on industry, and you have to sit down at some point and just like gather all the thoughts and the idea, narrow it down, make selection, and then it's on to the next one. And so it's like document the thought process when they come, and then at the end of the day, as you say, it's about sitting down, being disciplined, and bringing it together at the right time.
It's such an interesting juxtaposition, I feel like, because it's, on the one hand, it's being disciplined, but on the other hand, it's autopilot. You just do what you do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, like for us, we're in a unique position, being the fact that we own 2 nightclubs. So right. Like there's this whole other nightlife part of our business that Jay doesn't have to pay as much attention to, but that I'm also involved in. But there's constant, like the youth is coming to us and partying, and so there is like opportunity to interact with what's happening out in the world when you're not working 60 hours a week, if part of your work week is interacting with that. So, but in my heart, I'm a bitter, jealous hater, and I don't like anything new or exciting.
As you should be.
So.
Of course. So here's way off the map. Do you have a creative icon? Or a business icon, or an icon that you
Rodney
worship?
Dangerfield is
Perfect.
my creative icon. No. Jay, you want to take that one?
Who's that person? I'm not familiar.
No respect.
No, in terms of style, I enjoy seeing the youth in third world country or poor neighborhood taking everything they can put their hands on and create something out of nothing and creating a new look. Like spending time a bit in India or even in Mexico, you see those kids, like they're 15, 16, and they create their own style. I think that's quite inspiring. I think New York has also that kind of energy. And yet, trying to take that energy and do it yourself mentality and bring it to all level is quite exciting.
Do you guys have a style icon?
I don't think it's really one person. I think for me, a style icon is just someone that surprises you, that inspires you when you look at them, keeps things fresh, keeps things moving and interesting for you. I think, creative icon could be someone on the street, it could be a really good friend of yours, it could be something you see in a magazine. I think it's evolving, and I think that's important, not to be stuck on one person or one idea, and to be able to keep moving. Because I think fashion moves very, very fast. I think you have to be able to do that.
Absolutely. So, in talking about your, I think collaboration is such an important thing. I think it exists whether we know it or not, whether we want to collaborate with someone, whether we're climbing to the top and that person we're climbing over, they collaborated with us, whether they wanted to or not. But for me, I wanted to kind of know how do you guys, in your collaboration, how do your pairs break up? Like, what are the roles, and how do you support each other in those roles for you guys?
For me, I try and stay out of Jay's way as much as possible, and I kind of assist him and try and help him bring his vision to fruition. Unless I strongly disagree on something, I kind of take on the more of the business role, I guess. And so unless I strongly disagree with something, I'll usually stay out of his way. There are a lot of opinions floating around, and it can get really muddled, if everybody is getting their input in and just kind of messes things up. But when we do disagree, it's respectful. It can get heated at times, but I think
it's not a battle to the death or anything like.
No, I mean we're making T-shirts,
After all.
So it's not we're not curing cancer. Right. So.
And for you guys, how is because this is the interesting dynamic of being married and being creative directors and doing everything kind of together. Who does what?
Well, there's a lot of overlap, but we definitely have strengths and weaknesses, and we're both very involved in the creative process. I think that when somebody has a really strong opinion, it makes it almost easier because we just go with that rather than getting into a big discussion about it. We try to, I think we balance each other. I'm more technically trained. And she's obviously wearing the product, so it's interesting how I have somebody who I can really speak to about the need for what we're making, and that really helps me kind of hone in on what I'm designing. And
yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap, and I think there is also just, I think at the end we like the same aesthetic, but maybe we have a different point of view or a different way to get there, which is I think we push each other. I think we make each other better. And I think if somebody has a really strong opinion, then I think it sort of just fuels the other person to be able to, I think it just for us, I think it makes us better. I think it makes the product better, and I think there might be one part of it that I don't like, and maybe one part of it that he doesn't like, and so together the product becomes a stronger product.
But what I love about that is there's still that thread of remaining open, and I think that's kind of, for collaboration, that's key.
Mm-hmm.
I think just going on the concept of collaboration, I think it's actually freeing in a way. I used to work on my own, and working with somebody, I find much more liberating. I think there should be a lot more of it. I think it's, people, like you said, in business, you're always collaborating, whether you like it or not. If you're the head of your own company, you're still relying on so many other people. And once you sort of embrace that and get over your ego and get past it, you can do so much more with the help of the people around you.
Well, I love that you said that, because I think the same thing. There's a liberation in collaborating, coming together to create something bigger than any one piece.
And we also have to collaborate with the market itself, because at the end of the day, if you don't listen to the market, there might not be tomorrow. But going back to our relationship, I'm terrible with numbers, so when it comes to
French schools.
yeah, you say French school. So when it comes to building a collection and structuring it, that's when we work the most together, because it cannot be only fire outerwear.
Right.
You need something to fill in, and also he knows the retail aspect of a business better than me. So that's our biggest indicator of what's working, what's get us good press, all the categories that work the best. So we work together a lot on that.
And that's
level.
kind of, I mean, I think there's so many things to think about. That's why I think having another person to bounce those ideas off of, it's just vital. And I think along with compromise, collaboration comes that compromise, which I think can sometimes be a dirty word. But I wanted to ask, have you guys ever made a compromise that led to a greater result? And if you have an example or a story of somewhere where you came together for the greater good. You can also say no.
I'm sure there's plenty of examples.
Yeah, I mean, we're compromising and collaborating all the time. There's, like, as much as I said I stay out of his way, like, it's still a very collaborative process. We don't, like, if I'm away for a few days and I check in on what he's been designing, we might have a little bit of a, I'm like, what is this? But,
what have you been doing for 3 days?
Left alone. But no, we're constantly collaborating and compromising and saying, okay, well, this is amazing, but how can we make this like a more viable piece? A lot of times you have like whenever we make something like really over the top, it gets great press and we lose a ton of money. So like from my point of view, I'm like, what's the highest margin? How can we stay in business? I have 40 paychecks every Friday that I have to make sure don't bounce. And I'm constantly freaking out. But I don't want him to design with that in mind. So it's good for us to be collaborating and balancing each other.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. I think maybe we could talk later about doing a support group
yeah, totally.
for this. But it is a constant, you're constantly compromising. And that's part of the business. It's part of what fuels the creativity as well. If you don't have that, if you don't have these boundaries, the tension is it's sort of necessary to be creative. And I think a lot of amazing things come out of it. And I mean, it's going out your direct question. I don't know that I have a story behind it, but I think that the compromise always in the end, if you're able to sort of balance it, it always ends up better. And I think that that's part of doing better next season and next season and next season, and that sort of drive to improve the things that you've done is a big source of inspiration as well.
So when do you think it's okay to break the rules?
Once you know the rules, if you know them inside and out, then you just have to follow your intuition and follow your gut. And to do something for the sake of doing it, I think is for me anyways, it's never worked out. If I'm just trying to be tricky, just to be innovative and try to be the first to do something, if it doesn't come from a real place, it's not worth doing.
And Keith, you touched on this before, but this question of when is it more important to be true to yourself or true to your customer?
I mean, I think it's a really tough balancing act. it's really transparent if you're just making something to sell out as quickly as possible. You've seen, I mean, we're not necessarily a fashion brand. We're more of, I guess, kind of a lifestyle streetwear company. And in that sector especially, you see people really fast rise up and then disappear quickly, which is great. You know, people are cashing out quickly. But it's just, it's tough. You have to be like, not to be cliche, but like trying to appeal authentically to whoever, whatever demographic or whatever core audience that you have is very, very important. But also, you know, trying to run a business that stays above water is also very important.
And it feels good to you and you enjoy doing it.
That's my motivation, definitely.
So how do you, for you guys, how do you connect to your audience? Is that a part of your process? Is that important? Is that something that you think about? How do you appeal to the people who adore you?
Our business right now is new, so we haven't actually. We're about to come into stores in July and August. So this company that we're starting right now is a different sort of animal, and I think it's coming into an age of social media, and it's coming into an age of authenticity and connecting with your audience. And just sort of going back a little bit to the question you just asked a minute ago, I think that being authentic to yourself is being authentic to your customer. I don't know if there's a difference. I don't think for us as a brand, I think that being true at who you are as a brand and that becomes your brand. I don't know that there's a disconnect. So for that, I think then comes back to the idea of connecting with your customer is really listening to your customer and at the same time introducing your customer to new things and new ideas, but staying and not changing so drastically from one season to the other. You know, they're coming to you for an aesthetic, they're coming to you for a reason, and if you can try and give them the quality and the sensibility that is you, I think that that's how you're going to attract them.
And it's another collaboration.
Exactly.
That is a really good point. Just kind of maintaining like a common thread throughout collection or season after season, which, like, you know, we're a pretty non-traditional company and started a bunch of businesses that we had no idea how to do. And that was definitely a problem. We were just like, let's make this, let's make that. And like, it made no sense compared to what we had made before. And so kind of like learning how to make mistakes and survive and grow from that has been.
So that was another one of my questions. Is there something that you've created that you loved that other people hated, or that you hated and other people loved?
And collections of things.
Right.
There's always a debate. You're never going to please everybody.
Right.
You know, everyone has an opinion, and that's what's great at the same time. You know, there's a lot of different brands, there's a lot of different aesthetics, there's a lot of different choices in the world, and I think that is a great thing, and it's also a difficult thing. I think the important thing is not to try and be a brand for everybody, you know, really understanding who it is that you're appealing to and who your market is, and that will help you edit and help you sort of focus in that direction.
That makes sense. So here's another question for you guys, and if you're at an established brand, how do you make your voice come through the lens of that brand?
I think that you know, for us, we created an aesthetic through a philosophy rather than through like an actual visual archive. So we created sort of a different approach to the company that we were at, but it was just very much sort of a thought process that everybody that worked with us was aware of the thought process and why we were doing what we were doing, and not necessarily looking back, but really trying to push things going forward and really staying true to that idea and those ideals. And I think that, I don't know how other people work or big corporations. Those was really my first corporate job. So, but I do think that whatever you do, you need to relate to the product and really be true to yourself, whether it's a namesake or whether it's your own company. I think that the process is very similar, in my opinion.
So what has been the biggest opposing force that you've encountered in your creative journey, in building your brand? What has been the most difficult thing for you that you've come across?
I think kind of trying to balance our really aggressive dreams and with the reality of the market and our financial limitations. There's also in my mind while I was smiling, I was just thinking player haters, but no, I mean, we grew really, really fast and then had to kind of let the operations catch up, and that's been like our biggest problem is like, how do we run a real business? None of us are MBAs. If you like our educational background, our professional experience has nothing to do with what we're doing other than just like savvy and street smarts. So like figuring out how to pay our taxes correctly has been like the number one problem, honestly. So if we shut down, it's because of the IRS, not because we failed.
It's not my fault, right?
For me, a lot of the opposing forces come from the global versus local markets that you need to understand and talk to. Kinfolk was created in Japan in 2008, had big following in Japan, and it's a big part of the DNA of the brand, but also is very in sync with what New York is today, and with the nightclub and with the store, we talk to an audience on a daily basis. And so when we create something, whether it's from a collection I design or other partner in Kinfolk that do creative stuff, we're always trying to balance something that New York can understand and digest, something that Japan can also digest. And sometimes there's years where both markets are in sync and talk to each other, and it's exciting. Sometimes it's tough. Sometimes the youth are not connecting, and the cultural gap is wider, and it's more difficult to talk to both markets at the same time.
Do you think that's cyclical?
Yeah, I do think so. Some cycle can last a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think right now is a tough time for New York and Japan to connect, because the youth in Japan is much more domestic, more interested in Japanese-made culture, and New York is also there's a lot of energy in niche culture here that doesn't necessarily translate in Asia, and so it makes our job more difficult, but it's more challenging and more exciting also to translate that message from both parts.
I mean, for a streetwear brand, that's the ultimate payoff, really, is like when you like penetrate Japan and then money starts rolling in. So now that like New York and Tokyo aren't necessarily in sync, is definitely tough for a lot of brands, because retail there, like you do something small here and it could be massive there. And that is existing for like a different kind of brand, whereas for like 20 years, it would like a brand like us, and even like in the early years of our company, we did very, very well out there, and now trying to make the two communicate is more difficult.
But on the other hand, we've been quite successful at bringing a lot of the Japanese products and craft culture here in New York. And so when one way is not working great for a cycling reason, for like a generation reason, the other way might be better. And right now, all the menswear label from Japan that we bring into New York, and in our bar, all the liquor, the food that we bring from Japan has been quite successful. So there's always a way to create that exchange.
Yeah, and to kind of whet the appetite a little bit as well. So when that comes back, it's all aligned as to you've kept the authenticity, I think, right? And how about you guys? So what have you encountered greatest opposing force other than the devil?
I think for me, it's just the day-to-day micro, balancing time and the process. There are so many micro components to getting everything done that, a lot of times, I'll take 2 steps forward and realize that I forgot to do, the most obvious little thing that really puts a cog in the machine. So I think just balancing and being very precise on all the little micro things, while also, having our own business, we have to juggle the micro and the macro. That for me is the biggest problem, is just holding myself back and trying to balance the time to get all the processes in place before we, start development.
And do you find, does that get easier for you, or is it?
The more help you have, the easier.
Do you want to take that one, Nicole?
As you grow, as we hopefully, we've built a couple businesses in the past. As we grow and get bigger and we can hire more people to oversee certain things, it definitely gets easier.
Yeah.
And it just changes, your whole kind of scope changes. But for us, that's the biggest challenge, is really looking at that sort of the process. It's we're kind of in a different market that, going it's interesting to hear about how you look at the global. For us, it's, if we're building a big collection, it's really nice to have a lot of different, sort of desires from different countries, because they'll come and pick certain things from the collection. Like America will really focus on one thing, whereas Europe and Japan will focus on very different things. And it's very helpful for us to be able to then produce everything, and it's really interesting to see which sort of cultures gravitate towards different things. It's fun.
So here's my, if I knew then what I know now, what advice would you give to somebody just starting out?
Get a law degree.
Get a law degree.
Change.
Don't do it.
I think stay small as long as you can. I think that if you want, don't ever go and get a big paying job. Put money to the sideline as long as you can. I think that you get stuck the second you take something that, and you're not ready. I think that if your vision is to own your own business and do your own thing, forget about money and go work your ass off and get as much experience as possible, because experience and legitimacy of working for brands that you want, even if you're, just struggling to get by, will be invaluable to you later on. The longer you can hold off, the better.
Yeah, starting your own business is really difficult, and you don't make a lot of money, especially in the beginning. I think what's helped us is we have our own brick and mortar retail. We try to be as vertical as possible, and it's hard when you're competing against we have, it's a select shop. We have brands that are well represented in some huge box stores, or nice department stores, I guess is a better comparison. So when they go on sale, and it's hard for us to carry those type of brands at that price point, especially in Brooklyn. But being vertical with our own brand kind of boosts that up a little bit. But don't expect to cash in, and it's a lot of work. You have to grind, and it's there's no days off. You're constantly work. If you are in business for yourself, it's 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, constant stress, constant thinking, and constant work. But it's gratifying because you're doing it for yourself, and I'm blessed that I get to work with people that I grew up with. We've known each other since we were 16 years old. And I'm a lot older than that now. Which is great, but we're not swimming in money like Scrooge McDuck, unfortunately, yet.
Those were days. Yet, exactly.
For me, I think I would advise people to travel. Traveling is cheap in 2016. Go out there, go to Paris, Tokyo, London, make new friends, bring New York energy there, bring back new business cards, new a bigger network, connect the dots, and you're going to need it down the line, because to create a great collection, you're gonna need to find inspiration, material, factory, press, buyers, showroom, everywhere in the world, and the world is getting smaller. And the earlier you do it when you have time, when you're young, the easier it is when you're 30, 40, because you already know those people, they saw you grow, and it's good when everybody grow together and all your friends get the good job at the good magazine or the good department store, but you know them for 20 years.
Right.
We're not there yet, but soon.
I mean, I think it's a really exciting time in fashion right now, and I think it's a really different time in fashion. So I think the more that you can really look and see what's happening, I think a lot of brands are in flux. There's a lot of discussion about how to sell, how not to sell, online, offline, vertical. There's so much discussion going on, more than I've seen it in many, many years. But I think it's a good thing, and I think it's a really great opportunity for anybody who wants to start something new or have a fresh idea. I think there is a lot more opportunity for people who can start with something small and create it in a larger way themselves in terms of social media, creating your own websites. All of that, 5 years ago was impossible to do. And I think that's great for people nowadays, but I also think it's challenging because there's a lot of noise. And I think that the dust is still flying around, and I think it's going to settle, and more interesting companies are going to come out of all these changes that are going on in fashion. And so the more that you can look around and get different job experience at different companies and different avenues, whether it be in online, whether it be in production, whether it be in media, because somehow they're all going to connect together.
Awesome. And really quickly, what's the next big thing for your brand that you're really excited about for you guys? Probably July, right?
Shipping on time.
Shipping on time. That's big.
It is.
And how about you guys?
We're working on possibly opening another brick and mortar location. Undisclosed.
Undisclosed. I thought we were going to get an exclusive. Maybe next time. All right, I think that's all the time we've got. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.
Okay, our next panel, Fashion and Tech No Borders, comes hot on the heels of the Met's Manus and Machina opening gala last night. So this timing couldn't be better. On this panel, we have Amanda Curtis, co-founder and CEO of 19th Amendment, Colin Toohey, founder of Pavilion, Julia Gudish-Krieger, founder and CEO of Village Luxe, Maddie Maxey, founder The Crated, and the panel will be moderated by Maya Wujek, founder of Index and Fashion Tech Forum.
Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Yeah, super excited to be talking about fashion and tech today. It's obviously a hot topic this morning. I think everyone is talking about this, and I think what's really exciting to talk about today is what this means for the new creative, the new young generation, and what are the possibilities that these two industries coming together are going to bring to us, and as a consumer, and also as an entrepreneur, as a designer, as a creative. So first, I want to let each of these amazing people share briefly their name and what they do, the background, and obviously what they're trying to solve with their business. Are they coming out?
I'll start. My name is Amanda Curtis. I'm co-founder and CEO of 19th Amendment. I grew up in the fashion industry, and I am an ex-fashion designer turned tech entrepreneur. 19th Amendment really for me was a way to create a new business model for fashion and to let talent and drive be the determining factors of success for new brands that are emerging. And we do all of our manufacturing in the USA, so hoping to make fashion a better place for everyone.
My name's Colin Toohey, Pavilion is a company where we make solar-powered fabric. I'm an electrical engineer, and we started our business with a lot of Department of Defense grants, making solar-powered military tents. So we had a very large form factor product development cycle with the military, and now we are licensing the technology to the fashion and consumer goods industries. So we don't make jackets, we don't make backpacks, we don't do anything like that, but we license the technology and educate the consumer and educate the designer about that. My background's electrical engineering, my partners are designers, so we're a little bit of everything. I'm on the tech side and the business side.
Hi guys, I'm Julia Krieger and I'm the founder of Village Luxe. Village Luxe is essentially Airbnb for high-end fashion. So we've created what is now an invite-only community focused on New York, although you guys can use invite code FIT, that lets women borrow high fashion pieces from each other's closets. So think about the sharing economy that's really disrupted apartments and cars, and looking at really a different asset class and one of the largest assets, I think, as women we own, which is a high-end wardrobe. So essentially extending that friend dynamic that already exists of, hey, can I borrow that, but across an entire neighborhood, apartment building, and city. And we also partner with designers who rent out archive closets. We have stylists and editors from Vogue borrowing for different editorial. So many different ways that we intersect with the fashion world.
So, hi, my name is Maddie. I'm founder of a company called The Created. We focus on the intersection of technology and textiles. So we prototype electronic textiles, we build electronic textile garments, and now we're really focused on research and development and developing better technologies for making e-textiles. If you're a little unfamiliar with this space, it's anything from doing like a programmable matrix for a Zach Posen dress, which was a project we worked on a few months ago, to making like a circuit board for a heated jacket that's entirely made out of fabric.
Awesome, thank you. Sticking with you for a second, Maddie, I think when people think about fashion and tech, sometimes the most obvious place your brain goes is to wearables, so wearable technology, and a couple of you are really deep in that space, including you, obviously. Can you talk a little bit more about the work you're doing with e-textiles, and also on a broader sort of Internet of Things scale, like how you're sort of approaching what this means for what's the future of wearable tech?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the exciting thing about the wearable tech space is that it's still very much so undefined. So it can mean Google Glass to one person, a smartwatch to another, to us it means e-textiles. And I think that it's up for claim in terms of definition. The way that we tend to look at this space is that wearable tech is a broader category, and that there are so many amazing innovations within that aren't just electronic, but also new materials. So phase-changing materials that change in the sun, that change with weather, or sometimes it's structural differences. So tessellating garments, things that can go from one form to another, can be really fascinating. So looking at wearable tech as a much broader category, there's wearable computing, which originated with a group out of MIT led by Steve Mann, and basically what he did was strap computers to his body, and it's wearable computing. I think that's really exciting and interesting. We tend to focus more on the less backlit screen sort of electronic and materials innovations in the wearable tech space. And the interesting, or at least what we think is the interesting problem there, is that normally you want electronics to be as small as possible. So everything in your phone is compacted, built up to have a really tiny form factor. But when you're doing electronics for apparel, sometimes you need to run a wire over 2 or 3 feet. And that's a totally new, weird problem to make something on a soft, flexible surface with really large circuitry for the body. So in that e-textile space, I think that there are a lot of cool problems to be solved, but in wearable tech in general, there are a lot of mysteries, and I'm sure a lot of you will contribute to the space and solve some of those over the next few years or so.
Cool. Colin, actually, I know you worked recently on a jacket collaboration with Tommy Hilfiger, and I think that was kind of an interesting learning experience about where some of the challenges lie with a brand mindset versus coming from the tech perspective. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and to Maddie's point, the wearable tech wave that's happening, we as energy generators, which is what we are, we're a power production capability, we're riding on the back of that wave. So we're not driving that wave, we're not in the eye of the storm. We're saying, oh my God, there are so many electronic components in clothing, it needs to be powered, and that's where we come in, and we're just gonna grab onto that. From a collaboration standpoint, it's really tough for us because A, we're not the designers, so we have to be okay with the design that happens. From a technical standpoint, unlike what Maddie's doing, well, not unlike what Maddie's doing, what we're doing is difficult. It's hard, but the technical challenge is not the biggest challenge. It's a business challenge. It's a business development challenge. It's a business relationship challenge. I mean, there are just not many electronic circuit engineers within a fashion company. I actually can't even think of really more than a handful in any fashion company that I've ever heard of. So that means that the processes from beginning to end of the supply chain, when you would manufacture a chip in China, integrate that into a personal device and then package it and ship it, is a totally different supply chain than going from the mill to the cut and sew factory to, you know, your distribution channel and wherever you're going internationally. So what we have to do is intersect those supply chains, and within that, you have to understand who within the companies are interested in the new technology. So if you are selling a fabric to a company, you're pretty sure that there are a couple people within that company that you can go to. If you're selling a new technology to them, there's no rules for this game. There's no rule book. It could be the PR department, it could be the creative director, it could be the executive team, it could be some member of the board, it could be on the production side. So you have no idea, and that's our biggest challenge, is internally within each company there's a little bit of a different structure, and it's a new game, so we're trying to figure out how to play it from a functional standpoint.
That's awesome, and I think for the students here, it's really interesting to start thinking about the way that, you know, brands and companies work from the inside. It's beyond the design of the product. It's so complicated just to even say, okay, we're gonna have one new product with technology woven in, and therefore you take something else off the floor, something else out of the shop, and you have to hope that that kind of fills the place. And so anyway, let's shift gears for a sec. I'd love to talk about 19th Amendment, and again, talking about sort of young creative talent. Talk to us a little bit about how you build the community on 19th Amendment and sort of what you're offering a young designer who's looking to start their own line. And of course, not to give you too much, but how the technology is sort of able to make all of it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it starts with what technology enables us to do, what it enables designers to do. It gives everyone a voice. It's really a democratizing thing, and that hadn't really happened in fashion, at least when I saw, and I had my own line, I worked with other designers, was that it was all about how much money you had and who you knew, or how many degrees away from Anna Wintour you really were, which isn't what technology, if you're giving people a way to reach the consumer first and put product to market without taking that risk, then you can actually make a much more innovative environment through fashion. So we created this community of over 400 designers from all around the world. We actually do have an FIT current student involved, where they can put up their collections and test, just like we do in the tech startup community. It's called an MVP, so minimal viable product. So they're just putting up designs and seeing if there's even an audience. Our technology enables us to gather the data and those data points around who that consumer actually is. And then our technology also handles all the manufacturing on the back end. So we're able to streamline that process and make a garment within 4 weeks. So it's really quite powerful what we're doing for designers, but also for consumers who otherwise would have no way to access this new fashion.
It's amazing. And speaking of manufacturing, I know that you recently opened or made a partnership with a factory in Puerto Rico, which is so cool and exciting. Just tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, so our whole goal is to streamline the manufacturing process as well. Someone said last week, it's not about see, buy, wear, it's about see, buy, build. So we have manufacturers across New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New Jersey, and we recently got a grant from the Puerto Rican government to go down there, because it's still made in the USA, and reinvigorate manufacturing down there, which is fantastic, because we're bringing back jobs, and we're enabling consumers to actually have a say in where their clothes are made.
Fantastic. Julia, speaking of building communities, and I think, with 19th Amendment also, it's really taking a new approach to shopping. Talk to us about how Village Luxe is doing that, and also how it, I think we talk a lot about the shared economy and this trend of the sharing economy, and I really feel like you're creating sort of fashion's answer to that.
Thank you. For Village Luxe, it really, a lot of it is about community. In a sense, we're trying to bring kind of friendship and community back to high fashion, which unfortunately doesn't always exist stereotypically. And in using, the tech platform and the sharing economy to do that, we've empowered, a community that can connect globally. I mean, right now we're just focused on New York, but you can use our app and you can literally search within 4 blocks of me, who do I have mutual friends on Facebook with that's a size 41 shoe that likes Givenchy, that has shoes that'll work for my date with my husband. And the beautiful thing is when you message that woman to ask if you can borrow that, well, she'll probably see that you have 20 mutual friends, and she'll say, how do you know Susan? And then all these beautiful things emerge from that. So I think in building specifically a hyper-local marketplace, there's a very special energy behind it that is fueled by this technology and, by the ability to really connect people both in the same city, and then on a global level, the way that we see this business growing is really not even just focused on the US. I think Asia's a massive market for something like this. I think, all of the sort of fashion capitals, and there's no reason why, within a couple of years, I can't go to Hong Kong just with a carry-on, because I've already identified, these 3 women that, are my size, and if this dress doesn't fit, something else in their closet will, and if that dress does fit, they'll probably have shoes and a clutch to match. So I think tech really is about making the world much more of a flat place, and in our approach to the sharing economy, it really is about, again, bringing that sort of friendship to high fashion.
It's amazing. Really calls to mind, actually, the title of our panel, which is Fashion and Tech, No Borders. Really couldn't help but think about that. What are your thoughts on that, Maddie, when we talk about no borders? And what does that mean to you, and how do you incorporate that idea into your work?
Absolutely. I tend to really think about it in terms of the physical making of a thing. And there's so much information out there enabled by technology that, if you want to, like, we're working on a project now using galvanic skin response. So I know that I can go on the internet and find 2 instructables, a YouTube video, and maybe a free white paper about how to do really good galvanic skin response. And I think that giving people the tools to really satiate their curiosity and investigate is something that technology is incredibly useful for. And it's not just that. I can then go and buy all of the components off of Adafruit, or really a really easy to access website, which wasn't always there. So I think about Fashion and Tech No Borders as, giving people the tools and the resources to prototype and build things and tinker, learn and grow and interact with creative and maker communities to really drive innovation forward.
Same to you, Colin. I think I'm curious to hear you. I know that you're sort of working on launching a consumer products division, and which is a totally different approach. So how are you trying to break down those borders?
Well, I think for us there are 2 borders. One is the business relationship border, which isn't a huge deal. I was complaining about it earlier, but it's not that bad. The real border from my perspective is a stigma in wearable tech. And I think that's because designers and brands have got so excited about the capabilities early on that they said, oh my God, we're gonna plaster this stuff all over. We have no idea who's gonna use it. We don't really care. We're gonna make a dozen garments and see what happens and get a lot of media attention. I think from my perspective, the border, or from a marketing standpoint, it's that chasm. It's where, how do you make a wearable tech product, not geeky. And that is our biggest challenge. And one of the things that we're trying to push on the brands is let's integrate this into a garment and not plaster it on. And I think once that border falls or that wall falls, I think it's going to be a pervasive wave of wearable tech where you're just not going to know what we're wearing is smart. We're going to be up on the stage and no one's really going to know. And right now, because of branding and because of advertising, brands want you to know. They say, we do this really cool thing. Come and see this flashy thing that we're going to make one of for the Met Ball, right? And we are trying to get more mass market, and it's also a volume issue. So the border is going to come down and the wall is going to come down when volume is high and costs are more affordable. And that doesn't totally line up with high fashion, but I think it's going to be, it's going to expand very quickly in the next 12 to 24 months. I'm almost positive of it.
Same to you, Amanda. I want to hear your take on no borders in fashion tech.
So many. I mean, I think you all touched a little bit upon it has to come to the consumer. The consumer has to adapt it. But it's up to the designer to make that a form that the consumer wants to adapt. So for us, it's all about testing. It's all about bringing things to market that probably wouldn't have gone into market even 5-10 years ago. And letting the consumer make the ultimate choice of what moves forward, which is incredibly democratizing. So for us, we look for designers from all around the world and literally no borders. We're really looking for the most creative, the most innovative. It's not about looking at last season's numbers and what trend reports are dictated to which designers. It's all about the organic vision that designers are bringing to the table because it's something new, it's something different. And who are we to say as 19th Amendment or any other brand what will sell? It should really be up to the consumer. And technology enables that because you can go to the consumer much quicker now and gather those initial data points and make it a product that they actually want. So in a way, I think it's making fashion even faster. Not fast fashion, smart fashion, but it's evolving much quicker.
Awesome. And Julia, you kind of launched this new no borders conversation, so I think you've covered it, but can you talk to me about, obviously sort of coming from a background in fashion industry, how did you approach this enormous challenge of building a tech product to connect this community? I mean, for someone who, obviously has more of a fashion background than a tech background, I'd love to hear how you did it. Did you have help? How did that happen? I'm sure you all could talk about this.
Well, actually, I was in venture capital beforehand, so not like tech as in coding background, but I was investing in a lot of different marketplace businesses globally. So, the beautiful thing about that kind of background is I spent 4+ years looking under the hoods of companies and seeing what makes them tick. And I think the marketplace business specifically, it's a very unique animal. It's very hard to build, but then once you reach a certain tipping point, it's impossible to stop. I think that's a very interesting element to it. And there were other, really learnings when I was in VC of looking at similar businesses that I definitely wanted to apply, to whatever business I would eventually create. And I spent a lot of time looking at the fashion tech industry, actually, and looking specifically on the consignment space. So in my mind, that was really what had existed of how do you monetize your closet? Oh, well, here are some places where you can sell things, right? You've kind of had 15, 20 years of a brick and mortar consignment space, and then maybe the last 3-4 years you've had a bunch of fashion tech folks pop up, like Real and Vaunt that help you sell things. And so I'd spent a bunch of time looking at those types of companies, and the issue with most of them is they're very supply constrained. And, if I am the Real and, I find you as a customer, you have 200 things in your closet, I can probably only convince you to sell 10 of them. And once they get on the site, someone buys them, they're off the site. So I need a lot of people like you. For us, in looking at starting a marketplace, I wanted something that was very sticky. So for Village Luxe, because it's not pieces that you have to sell and part with, it's pieces that, maybe you're wearing last week or maybe you'll wear next week, but if you have full control over who you rent it out to, you might part with it. And so in looking at building this type of marketplace, the same person, we get 190 things out of your 200, and they stay on the site. So a lot of the learnings from VC were really helpful in thinking through what types of businesses make sense and are easier to scale. But challenges, the fact that I haven't come from a pure tech background in terms of coding, I would suggest anyone here that's thinking of starting, a really tech-enabled company, if it's pure e-commerce, there are a lot of sort of plug-and-play solutions like Wix and Squarespace. For something as complex as we're doing, we really had to build it in-house. And as not being a technical, person myself, I would really advise anyone considering that to either bring on a technical co-founder or an advisor that can really be on your side of the team to help you understand the lay of the land. So one of the founding CTOs of Uber just joined our advisory board, which I wish we had looked at before, because it's really helpful to know what you don't know. So I would give that recommendation to folks looking into tech.
Awesome. Amanda, I want to ask you the same question, because I think, you're just so stylish, Julia, that I always think it's coming straight out of fashion, but it's true. But tell me about how you approached this.
Yeah, so I have the pure fashion background, and basically what I saw was an industry that hasn't changed in about 100 years. I grew up in it. When I got into it, I was working for major designers, had my own collection, and just saw that things really weren't working, or they weren't working in a way that made sense in this digital age. You have companies that start with 5 people, have less money in funding than a 10-minute runway show, and they're more profitable than some of those brands out there. That's an issue. So decided technology has to be used in this industry, and it's kind of like the wild, wild west out there. No one really knows exactly where fashion tech is going. From the major department stores, big brands, to even us startups, it's kind of, anyone's game to really figure out. So that's very exciting, and 100%, there are people out there like technical co-founders and co-founders who understand the tech piece, who can help bring those visions to life and make it possible. So for us, it's all about the team. We have a fantastic team. The one thing that unifies us, and I'm the only one with the real fashion background, is that we're out to make something positive. There's a real kind of pot of gold at the end. There's a huge impact that we can make, and that's really where you need to start your company, is with a unified vision, and then everything kind of comes together, because it really is the merging of two worlds.
Thank you. Maddie, talk a little bit about your background too. And I feel like you kind of had the tech side but the interest in fashion as well. And how did you kind of get to be doing what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a background in fashion. I went to Parsons for all of one grand semester. So you guys have made it farther than me, probably. And then I started working at General Assembly. And I was working in their co-working space before they closed it down to have classes, but I got to meet a lot of people in the startup space and learned about them, and I also started taking classes on programming, and I think that classes alone don't teach you these skills, but it just started asking the right questions. So I just started setting up a curriculum for myself, started going through different books, working on different projects, and a lot of what I know is self-taught, and I'm still learning along the way. I also worked on a 3D printing team at Autodesk for a while. I've built apps for different companies, just have a lot of on-the-job experience, and I think that learning how to solve problems on the job lets you find really good solutions whenever you're working on something challenging. And having that fashion background means that we can look at a clothing pattern, design a circuit that works within the shape and the geometry of the garment itself, and then figure out what kind of fabric we should be choosing for it, and then also be able to choose the electronic components that make sense for it. So especially for the new wave of wearables, I think it's really important to understand both materials, shape, form, and technical challenges. And I think that it sounds like Colin's team has a lot of that as well, with working with tinting, materials, structure, form, and definitely the intersection of industries is something that we've really enjoyed spending time in, and that I think is a really promising new space.
Yeah, I was also going to add, from a technical standpoint, obviously we're a technology company in particular materials, but there is a lot of overlap, and it's really fun to collaborate because we work with architects on stadiums and master plans, and there's a lot to be learned from them in the fashion industry and vice versa. But we also are form finding and doing computational analysis on cutting patterns. And that's an industry that my partner started in the 70s in the computational design of tents, which sounds like not that exciting, but you can apply that same thing to the drape of clothing, and we use, you know, computational software to do a lot of that stuff, and with solar cells and how they integrate with each other and the fabrics. And so there's a lot of kind of cross-pollination, which I think is super important, and that's why I would always recommend, if you're interested in starting a business, work at a small company, to get an internship Xeroxing quarterly reports at some conglomerate is not going to help you start a company, however great it is for your resume. Get your hands dirty and really have some fun at a small business, especially if you're interested in starting a business. It would be a no, you know, it's not a question, so.
I think we're starting to run out of time a little bit. So I want to talk about what you guys are thinking about in terms of the future, and what are the challenges that you sort of are anticipating facing, you know, tomorrow, today, and maybe in 5 years if you have it your way? I know. Julia, let's start with you.
Our plans for the future, big plans, big plans. Well, I mentioned right now we're just focused on New York, and that's really about discipline. I think too many companies unfortunately spread themselves out too thin and are figuring it out in multiple cities. You ideally kind of want to know what that funnel looks like, and then you pour money on top and beautiful things happen. So New York is the focus now, but you know, in the future, like I mentioned, we really see this being a global business. We really see not just every metropolitan city in you know, the US, but globally expanding there as well. I think there are so many interesting intersections with the fashion world that, you know, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Again, my background wasn't fashion, so I remember I was actually speaking at another entrepreneurial panel where someone at the end came up to it and said, you know, I work at Yigal Israel, we have an archive closet. I'm like, what's an archive closet? So there are so, you know, many channels that have opened that I haven't even expected. We just got approached by a large hotel chain that wants to rent out pieces for their presidential suite. Like, interesting, like never even thought of that as well. So there's so many different ways that we look forward to uncovering and growing. And I think the challenges, I would say, are prioritizing, you know, especially when there's a lot of opportunity, you want to make sure you're focused and pointing the cannon in the right direction. And I think also surrounding yourself with the right team and having that scale without sacrificing culture is something that I know a lot of startups that are larger than ours have shared. But I look forward to that challenge.
Cool. Amanda, same question.
So for us, for designers, we think of ourselves like a lean LVMH. We want to find the next 10 Michael Kors DVF Zach Posens, and we know that they're out there. We want to give them a chance. And we can do that through our platform and through the data that we gather. I think for the consumer, it's all about hyper-personalization. I think that's where fashion tech is going anyways. Manufacturing is starting to enable that now. We live in a hyper-personalized world. You create your own brand every single day when you use social media. Why shouldn't the clothing that you wear also express that individuality? So it's getting to consumers quicker. It's giving them more options. It's somewhat integrating them into that process, that very quick feedback loop that has helped companies like Zara. How do you give that to independent designers and make it a much more diverse community? And then on the manufacturing side, we're in the US right now, but we see this as a global play. We're in 29 different countries. Why not have manufacturers across the world enabled with our technology so that if you live in Italy, buy a piece from a designer in California, you should have that made down the road from you at that factory. So there are ways to think about fashion that makes more sense on a business level, on the consumer level, on the designer level, and finally just on an ethical, sustainable level. Why not?
Maddie, same question, but I want to also hear sort of in the next year or two, how do you envision working with brands on and in your ideal world, how are wearables, what level are they at that point? And what are they bringing to our lives?
Absolutely. I think Colin touched on this earlier as well. So when we're working with brands, there's often a huge deterministic gap where, if you're talking about a technical design, it's mostly functionality. If you're talking about a garment design, then you're often talking about aesthetics and beauty and shape and form. And so, I think that part of it is building a lot of design standards and rules around making electronic textiles and fabric-based wearable tech, so that there's not as much of that linguistic gap. And when we're meeting with companies, we all understand these design rules and methodologies around making something like this. I think a lot of it as well is getting information out there. So at The Created, we started writing a lot more about the space and the history. And the textile space has a really rich history, especially of women doing experiments and working in the space. And it's only really now that the Department of Defense is putting a lot of money into specifically smart garments for apparel. And so over the next year, we're hoping those conversations shift with brands from coming from kind of two different sides to being really on the same page, just because there's more information out there and there are more guidelines out there. Moving into the future, we're just really excited to hopefully help people innovate, make useful tools, and learn a lot along the way.
Colin, any last thoughts as well? What's most important and exciting for you?
Well, from our perspective, we want to be a material. We want to be a material brand. So Gore-Tex, Cool Max. We think that our fabric is going to be ubiquitous at a certain point. So we really want to be a tool for the designer and for the fabricator and for the brand. We don't want to make clothing. We want to manufacture our fabric, which we're really good at. And we don't want to be a consulting firm. I think we want to be a household brand in terms of a technology that's integrated into all sorts of things. It might be beach chairs, umbrellas, canopies, stadium roofs, awnings, and clothing. So, that's where we see ourselves, as a material supplier to all of you folks.
Amazing. And on that note, just quickly, Index is a community for creative talent to connect on new opportunities in a digital network. And for those of you who are designers or young creatives, please check it out. It's theindex.com. My name is Maya at Fashion Tech. My email, is Maya at fashiontechforum.com. Please feel free to reach out to me. FTF is an annual conference. Our next one is in October. Thanks, guys. This is awesome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited about our next speaker. We have come across this company in our research. We're always discovering new concepts and hoping to educate our customers about what's next. So we came across this great concept called the newsstand. I hope many of you have heard about them, and if you haven't, you'll hear all about it today. So the newsstand is a retail concept that has taken over the underground little bodegas that live in your metro stations. So you know how all of them look really crappy and old, and you pass by it really quickly twice a day. Many of us pass by it twice a day. And some of us stop to get some water, some of us don't. This company came together and reinvented that experience, and I'm excited to hear it myself. So please welcome to stage George Allen. He's the co-founder and creative director of the Newsstand. You stand right here. You have the clicker?
I have the
You're
clicker.
All set.
I'm all set. Thank you. Hi, guys. How are you today? Good? Awesome. So I'm going to try and figure out how to use this thing while doing some note talking. And I've got a video that I'm going to show you guys, and I hope that it kind of helps explain a little bit of why we do what we do, and then we'll get into some slides and conversations around specifically what the Newsstand is. But this is just a fun way to kind of give you a glimpse at how we kind of look at the Newsstand overall. So let's see.
We live in an amazing city, an
amazing world for that matter. It's filled with new ideas, new experiences, new things to eat, to touch, to play with, to talk about, to listen to blog about, to shout about. Humans dig progress. Maybe we should combine a spoon and a fork. Maybe cars should drive themselves. Maybe my jacket should adjust for the outside temperature. Maybe instead of a food cart looking like this, it could look like this. Yet somehow, this stuff, newsstands and convenience retail, has escaped the crosshairs of human progress and ingenuity. We've somehow turned a blind eye to their dusty girly magazines, petrified Mars bars, and indifferent service. What's really crazy about this for you folks in the room is that it represents perhaps the best opportunity, the best mental and physical real estate from which to introduce new products and new ideas, and to put a smile on their faces while they're traveling from point A to point B, because it's an amazing city and an amazing world, filled with exciting new things. We believe people can have a new day every day.
So that's our little kind of have a new day mantra video, and it starts to speak to how we kind of look at the world overall from a very big picture lens. Like, there's no reason why we shouldn't all be kind of seeing something new or discovering something new or feeling something new, especially during these otherwise mundane parts of our day, like commuting past the same newsstand every day, twice a day, 5 days a week, 10 times a week, right? So I'm gonna go into a few slides here that we can talk about. Give me one moment. There we go. So that's us, that's the newsstand. And when thinking about the have a new day thing, it's a mantra that we kind of try and live by, but I think it also speaks to all of us. There's a lot of creators and creatives in the room, and it's interesting, we kind of, inherently absorb the world around us and ultimately express that back out into the world in new ways. And I think that the more that we can be exposed to things that are new and interesting, the more that we can then express things that are new and interesting, right? So we kind of believe that every day is an opportunity to have a new day, and it's the way that we kind of frame our entire business. And I think I'll show you some other stuff about the newsstand so you can kind of tie it together. So this is a kind of big picture slide, and we don't have to read through all of it, but I think the biggest thing to take away here is that people deserve to be inspired, and that people's time and attention are a precious and valuable commodity. And we don't really mean valuable in the sense of like a monetary kind of institution, but more of that, ultimately the things that we spend time with inspire us, right? And they mold us. And then, what we take in is kind of what we put out, right? So our time is very valuable, and the things that we're exposed to ultimately help to mold us, right? And I'm gonna run through some of this stuff because it'll just help you understand what the newsstand is. So we set out on a simple and compelling mission to bring the newsstand into the modern era with new products, new content, and new experiences for people on the go, all packaged with a spirit of service, style, and modern convenience. The newsstand wraps retail and media into one seamless experience. The store is a medium that we program daily, and our free membership app enhances the store experience with special offers, fast mobile payment, while also delivering a digest of stories, music, and video. We have an intimate relationship with a lot of our members and our customers. We see them twice a day for the most part, and we try and show them as much physical and digital love as we possibly can, which is a funny way of saying it. But so we are, on the one hand, a well-curated convenience store that provides an elevated mix of essentials, and also a place to kind of uplift and refresh your daily routine with new products, new experiences, and new services. So again, when thinking about the spaces that we walk past every single day as New Yorkers, that are part of our daily routine and are very native to what we do, there's very little discovery, there's very little innovation, there's very little kind of aha moments that you have. I mean, it's rare to go, through a subway station and feel like you're gonna discover something every time you walk past a certain place, right? But why not? So here's a little bit about our actual store locations. We started with 2 locations. One is in Union Square subway station. One is down in the World Financial Center. And we just opened a 3rd under Columbus Circle in the new Turnstile retail development. I don't know if you guys have been, but it's super cool. Here's a shot of the Union Square store. So this space was an old newsstand for the better part of 30 years. This store is 140 square feet, so that's 12 feet by 12 feet. So it's just big enough to get 5 or 6 of you in. What's interesting here is that we have an amazing cross-section of New Yorkers with which we can kind of put new things in front of them. This is a different format that we did in the World Financial Center, and this is more of a kiosk. So the store itself is all rolling around on wheels and kind of flexes and rotates and locks together. So the discovery there is that we can actually physically change the entire store in the blink of an eye overnight. So when you come on Monday morning, the store looks different than it does Tuesday morning, right? And then this is the new turnstile development. So this is kind of a hybrid of both stores. What you're not seeing here is that kind of island piece of furniture in the middle of the room is actually a sushi table. You know when you go to like sushi restaurants and they have the conveyor belt of like sushi that goes around? So we're thinking like, what is a literal kind of translation to like showing people new things and refreshing them with new products and putting new things in front of them, excuse me. And we were like, why don't we just put it on a sushi table? So that's what we did. So you heard me earlier talk about members, and what is a member? A member is someone who just downloads our app and becomes part of our community. It's free to join, there's no barriers, anyone can become a member. And the way that we kind of deliver things to you are many, actually. You have a member card, which identifies you to our store, so you can check in and scan and buy stuff and get deals and discounts. There's special offers for you. There's secret stuff that you may or may not know about. So we also send you a little thing called a high five. A high five is a deal or promotion on 5 products that you can get for a super awesome discount. Very easy. You can pay with the app, but really importantly as well is that it's entertainment, right? So there's utility on the one hand, which is connecting you to things, giving you deals and discounts, getting you your green juice and your newspaper, and you're on your way. But it's also giving you entertainment and discovery and things that are kind of net new to your everyday routine. So every single day we have an editorial team that's curating amazing content. So it's stories, news, music, videos, links, articles, you name it. But every day it's new, every day it's interesting, and it's all through the lens of discovery. So it's really about kind of putting things in front of you that are inspirational, interesting, and will help you potentially have your own kind of new ideas and thoughts and put that back out into the world, right? Our members are a pretty engaged community. These are actually some quotes from our members, which I thought was really nice. The Monday morning mix gets me up and on my way, thank you. So somebody really likes our playlists, which I thought was really cute. And this slide, let me see where I'm at. This slide is actually just kind of talking about some of the tools that we use to help people have a new day. And really, when we think about the phrase have a new day, we try to put the customer at the center of that. I think very often, and we talk about this a lot at the newsstand, very often, as companies grow, the original kind of goal was to do something really great for their customers, and then somehow along the journey, the customers kind of get left behind. And especially in the convenience store space or the newsstand space, there is very little in the way of customer service. There's very little acknowledgement of a community. Even though these are places you pass twice a day every way, there's kind of a hands-off approach to that, right? There's no hospitality, there's no engagement, there's a lack of all of those things. So we try to put the customer at the middle of it and use all of our tools to keep funneling newness back to them, right? And here's a slide about, it's not the most interesting looking slide, however, what's interesting here is that the kind of cross-section of things that the newsstand wants to touch on, so like, is it retail, is it media? You know, we're outdoor advertising, but we're mobilely connected, and we do experiential stuff in our store, like DJ sets on Friday nights, and we're starting to touch on all these different things. And I think really what's interesting is that, you know, those are new ways of combining old areas to create things that are net new. So, you know, when I look at a crowd of kind of like students and creators and like, you know, innovative people, and I think about what the newsstand is doing, it's really about combining stuff that we're inspired by and combining stuff that exists and then using that to create new platforms, to create new engagements, to create new ways of connecting with people. So this is an even more boring slide about media revenue. But I think what's interesting here is that, you know, it's not that exciting to talk about you know, how we make money, but I think ultimately some of the ways that we've found for our company to survive is to work with brands and clients to put stuff in the hands of people that they've never actually seen before. So whether it's, you know, working with this amazing headphone company, Master and Dynamic, to get their kind of, to create listening stations in the subway so you can discover new music, or it's, you know, smart sampling free vitamins to people on Monday morning when they might still have a hangover from the weekend. There's so many ways that we can work with companies to give things to people in ways that are actually meaningful to those people. So I think there's this really kind of lovely, and my partner Andrew, who's here, would agree with this. There's this Robin Hood moment where you can kind of, you know, give customers and commuters something really awesome while also working with a very large brand to give them what they want. And somewhere in the middle lives a very happy community of people who are just getting new stuff and interesting things and learning more every single day, right? So this is a really nice quote that Forbes wrote about us. But when I kind of read this, I think I really look at it as like many worlds colliding. So like, you know, for us, are we a retail store? Are we a media company? Are we an app? Are we a newsstand? You know, are we a marketing platform? Are we a convenience store? I think the answer is yes to all those things. And what's interesting is that more and more today, you see these types of hybrid businesses who are flexing in so many different ways. And it's just, I find it really inspiring to think that now, at this point in time, you can actually make a company out of things that you're passionate about across numerous different touch points, right? So there's this beautiful amalgam of like hybrid companies that are allowed to be born now that couldn't have existed 5 or 10 years ago, right? And it's top of everyone's mind. How do you connect with people in meaningful ways? How do you discover stuff? How do you wrap all that together into some kind of interesting kind of package? And more you can start to build companies off of those things, which I think is really powerful. So that's just going to lead me into this little, oh, that's the last slide. But what I did want to say was, it's an exciting time, I think, for all of us, like for students who are learning new things and expressing themselves in new ways and absorbing all of this information that we have out in the world, that we should take advantage of that. We should absorb as much interesting stuff as we can. We should create as many things as we possibly can and put those out into the world for other people to see, right? And I think through doing that, we will continue to find new expressions and new things, new hybrid versions of things. There's no end to new. There's always something new. And if we keep pushing that, I think we'll discover that every day really is an opportunity to have a new day. So that's it. Thanks, guys.
So for our next panel, Menswear, the passion and community of the menswear market, we'd just first like to give a special thank you to Liberty Fairs for pulling this panel together and keeping community at the heart of all your trade shows. So in the panel, we have Donnell Baldwin, U.S. Deputy Online Style Editor for Mr. Porter, Nick McClish, buyer for Barney's, Sharifa Murdoch, co-owner and sales director of Liberty Fairs, Brian Trunzo, co-founder of Carson Street, Kirby Jean Raymond, designer for Pyre Moss, and the panel will be moderated by our very own Michael Fisher, creative director of menswear at Fashion Snoops.
Good morning. This is the men's portion of the day, so we're very excited about that. We have 4 very stylish gentlemen and 1 very lovely lady on our panel today. We're really excited about you guys being here. Thank you. Before we get into it, if maybe you'll just take a second, move down the line. Once again, introduce yourselves, kind of what your general role is, just especially for the students here, so they can kind of know about that. And you all have mics here, so you can kind of get your own mic. Hold it close. We'll start with Sharifa.
Hi, my name is Sharifa Murdoch. I am co-owner and sales for Liberty Fairs. I basically travel the world to find new brands for retailers to look at.
And you just got back from Rome.
Yes.
All right.
My name is Brian Trunzo. I'm a co-founder at Carson Street. I've recently left the business, but yes, it's a third-party menswear retailer specializing in advanced contemporary, designer, and luxury.
Guys, hold your mics a little closer.
I'm Nick McClish. I'm a buyer at Barney's, New York. I focus on luxury clothing and dress furnishings. Similarly, travel around the world, kind of finding newness for New York department store.
My name is close enough?
That's good.
My name is Kirby Jean Raymond. I'm a founder and designer of Pyre Moss. I started the business in 2013, and we do luxury menswear that's derivative from athleticism.
Hi guys. Last but not least, I guess.
No.
My name is Donnell Baldwin. I am the U.S. Deputy Online Styling Editor for Mr. Porter. And we are currently the largest luxury online retailer, particularly related to menswear.
Awesome, thanks guys. Let me throw some statistics at you first, which is we're all very proud of since we come from a very close-knit community in menswear. For 7 years now, since 2009, in the height of the recession, menswear is the only segment of the industry that actually has outpaced women's wear, something that I think we're all very proud of. It's increased between 9 and 13% every year since 2009. So that's awesome, and gives us more to ponder as we go into our roles. There's a lot of things to ponder currently with men becoming more stylish. There's certainly a lot of emerging markets that we're all looking at, and primarily those emerging markets and millennial consumers are the ones that are driving the growth. So thinking about that, we're actually going to look behind the scenes in our panel today. We really want to talk about the concept of community, because I think we all feel really strongly that it's something that makes the menswear segment of the industry very, very special. I'm going to kind of pitch some questions to you guys individually, but please kind of come in and join in once someone speaks about it. But let's talk about community. We're going to start off with that since it's the biggest part of our conversation. And Sharifa, of course, works at Liberty Fairs, which is definitely the most innovative trade show going on right now in menswear. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys embrace community, how you encourage it through your various events?
Well, Liberty is basically was formed around community. We love to bring people together and, try to find the best out of each and every individual. So for us, it's like menswear has that form already. It's easier. It's about building relationships with guys and girls in the industry and trying to create that platform for everyone.
Right. How have you all kind of found the menswear industry to be welcoming? It's a very small world. We've all kind of worked at some of the same companies, actually here on this panel. So how have you found the concept of community to affect your various roles?
Yeah, if it wasn't for community, I don't know that I'd be in menswear. In 2010, I was practicing law. I was an attorney in New York City.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a few minutes.
We'll
That's a whole different story.
And I was very defeatist with my outlook on my career. And I wanted to be a part of something, so I started a blog, like most people do in the 21st century. And it was a menswear blog. And very soon, I was kind of welcomed into this community. So if it wasn't for the encouragement of like-minded individuals that welcomed me into this community, I probably wouldn't be here.
I'd have to agree. I actually have met Brian and Sharifa previously, and the way that I met Brian, we were actually sitting right beside each other at a menswear fashion show. And what I kind of have taken on now is just that it's just so easy. I just introduced myself. And a little bit different from kind of the daunting fashion scene where it's kind of like, am I dressed appropriately? Do I look right? Like, who's this sitting beside me? Is he an editor? Like, what's going on? Like, I don't know him. It was just easy, and our conversation was really easy. Same thing with Sharifa. She introduced me to her business and invited me. And from there, we've been cool ever since. We text each other every now and again, and she invites me to different things. I just think that the sense of community is just really a close-knit community. I'm just meeting these two here, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be connected from this point on.
I agree. Good. Anything, Kirby? Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add on to that. I think also you brought up a good point about just how the menswear industry is definitely growing, but I think also it's different than women's wear in that women's wear, you're kind of pandering to an audience or a consumer that is really trend driven, whereas menswear, it's more based on style. And within that, when you start positioning yourself within the market, each department store, each specialty store, or each editor, they really cater to a certain style demographic. So it allows you to not necessarily have to intrude on one another's space and give each other more respect. So that kind of makes it a little easier where you don't feel as like, oh, you're going to be coming and cannibalizing my sales, or you're going to be, intruding on who my customer is. My guy is my guy because they come to my store to look at what we're doing. So I think in that regard, it really opens it up, and you don't have to feel so stressed that everyone's just taking everyone from everyone's business. So that I think is really nice.
For me, I worked and I designed women's wear from 14 years old to 24, so 10 years, and that was really a dog-eat-dog business. All the designers that I worked for really didn't like talk to each other, or like really didn't interact with each other. And it's funny because now, you know, I'm in the menswear space, and a lot of us do kind of compete for the same customers in a way, and you know, but this closet space for everybody. And but we're all friends. We go to Paris, we hang out, we go to bars, we go to strip clubs, we do whatever, you know. Like it's like we have the most amazing time, and you know, work is work. And Donnell mentioned that, you know, you always feel like, are you dressed appropriately? I'm never dressed appropriately. I always feel comfortable, so you know, it's a good sector of the business to be in.
Yeah, what happens at a trade show stays at a trade show. You'll learn that. Pretty much what we really want to walk away today with is that the new creative definitely succeeds through unified competition. So, you know, Kirby's very right in that we all are certainly trying to succeed in different ways, but we're all on the same track, and we do it together, unified through a similar vision, which is very refreshing. Another trait of the new creative is that they take risk, and that's something that we really love about them. So that takes me back to Brian. Of course, quitting his job, 2013, successful lawyer, writing a blog, and he really went after his passion at that point. Risk is certainly part of that. So maybe, Brian, if you could just start us off and really talk about how risk has kind of changed your path, you know, your journey in your career.
Well, yeah, I mean, the way it changed my path is I went from a certain thing, you know, showing up every day, receiving a paycheck, to being my own boss and running my own company. So there are risks associated there with, I mean, you know, the business can only pay you so much if it's not profitable. The business can pay you as much as it ever could if it is profitable.
Right.
So that risk of the uncertain is tremendous. But in my case, you know, something was speaking to me. I had to do something. So no matter what the risk was, you know, the upside that I saw of changing my profession was enormous, and menswear was the community that I wanted to join.
Awesome. Sharifa, maybe you could speak about how, and Nick as well, risk, how it comes to discovering new brands, discovering, you know, new brands that you want to have on the floor, Nick, and new brands that you want on the trade show floor at Liberty. How does risk come into play for you guys?
So I can say that for us, you can easily go out and get a big box brand and just be okay with it and have the buyers come to the show and see those brands and continue on about your business. You'll make money, you'll be happy, and everything will be okay. Right. Whereas we take risks, we feel like we need to shake up the industry a little and keep bringing the new stuff to the floor in order for people to get inspired and get the same inspiration that we get when we travel. And I think it's a big risk on our part because the buyers can be like, you know what? This is kind of whack, or it's kind of corny, we don't like it. Or they can just be like, this is a sick line and we need to put it in our store right away. I mean, we take a lot of risk on a daily basis. I think in this whole industry in general, we take a risk just because when the consumer isn't shopping, it's a risk on our part. It shows, you know? But I think for the most part, risk is healthy, and I think that in order for you to strive in life, you have to take those risks and you have to take those chances in anything that you do.
Would you say that a difference in kind of the women's world as far as trade shows and how you guys gauge is that many women's shows kind of are, you know, come, you know, everyone wants to come, we'll take you, whereas you guys are a lot more selective in your edit
yes,
for the
100%.
shows, which
We're
could
very
be risky.
it's very risky. I mean, like I said, you can get a big brand and say, just come on, pay the money and let's go. Or, like you said, we are selective. We curate the show. We have an amazing merchandiser that takes her time in making sure that the show looks right, and she takes pride in it. And I mean, like, we're salespeople, so on our end, we're like, no, we need this brand in, and and then she'll be like, no, I don't care if they're gonna pay you X amount of dollars, and she puts us in check, and that's how we keep the show going afloat the way it is.
Nick, you as a buyer, you deal with risk every day. You have spreadsheets in front of you, looking at things that didn't work, don't do it again. Right. You know, the role of a buyer has certainly changed over the years.
Definitely. I mean, I'm blessed to work at a company like Barney's New York, where I think in most people's minds it's synonymous with movement and emergence and newness. And you know, one of the best piece of advice that I've ever gotten was actually from my GMM. You know, head merchant for men's told me straight up, analysis is paralysis. And it's true. You know, to a certain degree, you can only look at historicals so often, so many times, and then you kind of get caught up in this whole repetitious cycle that leads you flat in the water. You know, right now everyone keeps talking about this industry becoming disrupted, and I think a large part of that has happened over the last few years. And at a company like Barney's, we really pride ourselves on finding that brand new designer, finding exclusives, really bringing to market things that consumers don't want, because that's essentially what they're looking for. At this day and age, you can get anything, anywhere, at any time. So it's no longer a need-based commodity, it's an experience-based commodity. So if you're thinking within the construct of a department store, brick and mortar, you can't have all the same brands that everyone else does. So with that in mind, we have to go out, we have to create, either identify new brands or even now start to look towards offering new experiences within the store, personalization, you know, whatever it may be. But that's what we try to strive for.
Kirby, as a designer, you certainly take a lot of risk.
Oh yeah.
Talk about how that affects your work, your art.
You know, this is a hot topic right now. You know, the whole buy now, show now thing. It's so layered. You know, we take so much risk because, you know, I want to stick to my art and I want to, you know, really build on my craft and really stay true to a vision. And then a buyer will come in and say, well, you know, maybe you should just do this all in red. Right. And I hate the color red, so it's like, no offense to your pants, but like, but like,
I should have checked with you.
You know, it's like that, but that's the type of thing that we deal with every day. And then, you know, we book fabrics, we buy things that don't work, and, you know, constantly, you know, you take a chance, you allow a buyer to kind of like steer a direction of a buy. You know, you might really believe in these 10 items, but they go for these 10 items, they don't sell, and they want to send everything back to you. So, you know, it's just a constant battle to kind of really just try to figure out where you fit in. And we're successful, but we're pretty new. Right. So we're still actively every day just trying to figure out like what is it that works for us, what is it that works for the brand, and what's going to carry us long term.
Right. Yeah. Good. Donnell, you work with a very specific aesthetic Mr. Porter is known for. How does the organization allow you to take risk in your role, you know, working with styling and kind of the visual communication of it all?
Oh wow, every day is a risk, and especially for those fellow stylists or aspiring stylists, it's all about taking risks. I spent many years at Ralph Lauren you can probably look at me and tell that.
Actually, 3 of us did.
Oh, really? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. We all share that.
Amongst friends. But many years at Ralph Lauren, so I think my personal style is a little bit more conservative. But as it relates to styling along with my team and making those appropriate edits for Mr. Porter, I always push them to take risks. Like, you know, change that shoe. Like, let's throw in a Birkenstock. Yeah, it looks a little hippie, but it'll work. You know, let's clash those patterns. Let's, you know, mix this together. You know, there's a lot of brand adjacency styling that we have to deal with. So, you know, we won't style a head-to-toe look, Givenchy, or, you know, Balenciaga or Balmain. So we have to kind of clash different brands and see what's going to look appropriate for what. So we literally take risks every single day.
Awesome. It's a good segue from risk into activism in our work. Something that we at Fashion Soups are constantly tracking is how cultural shifts are affecting our community and our industry, and action is one of those macro trends. And I kind of want to start with Kirby because activism really comes to life in your work, and your Spring 16 collection really made a bold statement about police brutality and Black Lives Matter. And in fact, you took a risk putting very important editors further back, and you put victims and their families in the front row, which I think we all applaud, definitely. But maybe you could talk a little bit about how these cultural shifts are kind of coming into your work, and the balance that you kind of, you know, strive with sellable merchandise and try to make a bold statement. It's a loaded question, I know.
It's loaded. You know, for me, I've always been this way. whether I always say, like, whether I was a mechanic, whether I was a pilot, whether I was a doctor, whatever, I would have still spoken out against issues and things that that I felt were important to talk about. It just so happens that I turned out to be a designer, and this is the platform that I have. So that was going to happen regardless. Whatever, this is just ingrained in me. It's ingrained in my family, everybody who I'm around. That's just what we do. So, I was taken aback by when I chose to speak out on certain topics, how well it was received, because typically in fashion, people don't speak on the sexy activism topics, right? They're like veganism, water crisis, things like that. And these, which are all equally important for in their own rights. But I think matters of I would say human relations don't really get glossed over. And it was a big risk for me because it did cost me at retail. Not like it was like prior. So like the best way I could explain it is, the show came out. I had placed SS16 orders a few months before in Paris. Those same stores who already placed their orders started canceling. Wow. Now SS16 ended up shipping to the stores that did do them, and it did really well. So it was kind of like you guys messed up. You should have stayed on this gravy train a little bit. But it was a huge risk. It was like I was telling someone the other day. I was like, when I walked out at the final walkout, I just knew in my heart that I ended my career that night, and kind of led to like led me to like a depressive state, and I ended up doing my AW16 show about depression. So it's working for me in just being who I am, and just talking about the things that really just whatever I'm going through, it's working for me. I don't know how that would work on a scale for like all designers, but I think if we're true to ourselves as opposed to being true to trends, we make better art, better product, and make longer lasting statements that people actually care about. You guys are still talking about my SS16 show, and I've just done another show. You know what I mean? So that's a great thing.
Yeah. Well said. Nick and Brian, coming from the retail side, how have you felt kind of things like brand transparency and these very big picture cultural things that consumers care about now? How have you kind of felt that in your jobs the last couple of years?
I would like to think of it in a way that no matter how niche something is, this is a really big world that has shrunk down. And if you are on point with your messaging, with your branding, with the way that you behave as a merchant, you can reach these people. So it's kind of crafting experiences around the product, no matter how niche it is. If that's sustainable fashion, or if that's an activist message in a runway show, it's up to you to use your creativity as a retailer, which sometimes merchants don't really think about the creative side of things. They're just thinking about the commerce. That's it. Just the number is the commerce. But it's kind of on you to let your life experiences inform that which you do in the retail environment. So if there's a cause out there that you deem worthy that you want to put front and center in your store, that's up to you. Just make sure that you find a way to craft it so that the 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 people in the world who agree with you find you.
And authenticity, I'm sure, is very important.
Yeah, I mean, I came to Barney's in 2014, spring, summer, and I'm not sure if you all remember what that campaign was for Barney's, but that was transgender. Bruce Weber did this beautiful campaign with us, and that's a huge, huge issue. That was before Caitlyn Jenner came out, so we were pretty much cutting edge, cut through that, that soundbite. And really got the conversation going. And from that, so much has really kind of come from that. I mean, within menswear especially, there's a full blurring of the lines now between what's identity within it. So many of the references, you look at J.W. Anderson with what he's doing, everything's about androgyny and just, is there femininity within masculinity? But having taken the risk, we got a lot of flack for doing something like that. Barney's is a huge company. But we took a stand, we stood for it, and our customers who support us and believe in us as a brand, they stuck with us. That's where you can see the power of fashion. Those are the transformative elements that I think take this from a business that's not just so much about product, you know, because ultimately a shirt is a shirt, but you can make it more than that. And that's what's really exciting, and that's where the storytelling and the identity can be shaped and formed for the consumer. So it's really exciting and something that I was really proud to be a part of.
Awesome. Let's shift from some of the deep topics to something a little more fun. We're all inspirational people. Maybe you guys could go down the line and tell everyone in the crowd what's currently inspiring you, what's in your zeitgeist. Could be emerging markets, could be certain classifications, but what's on your radar right now? We'll start here. Sharifa.
For me, what inspires me is people, and all of my travels along the way, I get inspired every time I meet someone new. So it's just basically travel. It's more travel and people and building relationships and forming those kind of communities within other states and other countries. That inspires me to the next level.
Great, yeah, travel I think is very important for all of us, probably.
Yeah.
I would say generally the future of retail, the future of design, everything from virtual reality to 3D printing. What are stores going to look like 20 years from now? Are they going to be in your living room with a headset on that you're seeing product around you? How will commerce work on your phone? Will we continue to use apps? Is the next generation of apps going to be different than apps today? Just generally the future. I think that fashion is a little bit behind when it comes to tech. It could use a little boost, but I think things like 3D printing and virtual reality will really kind of galvanize this industry and change things and shape it up.
For sure. Nick?
I think I'm most excited about the creative. I mean, in specifically the democratization of it. I think for so long, this industry has really been dictated by the big houses. And Zara came in and disrupted that approach. And now more and more you look at fashion shows and all the references are coming off the street. So I'm really excited to hear even about, someone like 18th Amendment or 19th Amendment with what they're doing and almost opening up supply chain to the masses. I think in the next few years that's going to be really interesting to see how that affects the way that we consume goods. So yeah, that's what I'm most excited about.
Right now, I'm really inspired by the election. It's a really interesting election year.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. What's the most interesting to me is not the candidates or anything like that. It's how the votes are being suppressed, and how you have like these groups of young people who are more energized than ever, and I'm one of them, more energized than ever, and going out and voting in these primaries, and their votes are not counting. And that's like what's inspiring me the most. So that'll probably be in my work, but that's my inspiration right now.
Did you give us a preview into the next collection, perhaps? Yeah, okay, good. Exclusive. Hey,
I think mine is twofold. It's a combination of purpose. I feel like what inspires me is just kind of living in my purpose, so kind of digging deeper and figuring out like what makes me tick, what type of things, and what do I like? The flowers, the color of the flowers, that's beautiful. Okay, let me find a tie that I can pull into an outfit. So purpose would be one of them. And then the second would be, for me, change. It seems like everything's changing at such a rapid pace that it's a little bit hard to keep up with. I'm sure you guys feel that as well. And particularly as it relates to someone like myself who is a stylist and has a styling background, it seems like a lot of people are stylists now. And so that's changing, and it's kind of like, well, what are they doing differently than what I'm doing, and then what is that person doing differently? But we all have a voice, we all have an aesthetic, we all have a purpose. So I would just say that change in general, like it just seems like there's a lot going on, and things are changing at such a rapid pace.
Good. We'll actually stay down there with you, Donnell. You come from Mr. Porter. I think everyone would agree they revolutionized kind of the way that style is articulated in a very visual medium. We have the Mr. Porter Post and great editorial on the website. A topic of conversation that comes up a lot in the industry right now is kind of emotional ROI for your consumer. So how they're going to get something out of experiences. So you're an online merchant. It's a little different than Nick and Brian and even Sharifa's kind of experience with what their consumers are wanting. But if you guys could just talk a little bit about how you're giving your consumer, your user, a very different kind of experience.
Well, particularly for Mr. Porter, I think our customer just wants a very exclusive, a very luxurious experience. And, we don't have a brick and mortar like a Barney's, so that experience has to translate via the internet. It has to, translate online. So that's giving them insights to sales in advance, kind of secretly, or, giving them a little bit of a discount, or, creating some type of like VIP type of connection with them. So we're calling them in advance and saying, hey, this is about to launch. So I'd say that's pretty much where we reside, because it is difficult to have, that type of connection without having a brick and mortar for someone to come in and actually touch and experience. So our customer care team has to be, on point. They have to know the trends. They have to kind of know and talk the customer through different things that are going on in the industry, along with, brand knowledge. So they're stylists, they're salesmen, they're coaches. It's pretty much everything,
Right. And Nick, you guys have kind of artisan days and amazing events. You always have, but what is Barney's doing kind of going forward that's really carving out a very interesting experience for your customer?
I can't share too much of that because those are industry secrets, but no, I think for us really it's Mr. Porter's done a great job of keeping us on our toes along with a lot of the other disruptive e-commerce sites. But I think ultimately where Barney stands alone is that we've always prided ourselves on challenging our customer, and people always come to us looking for newness. I think a lot of our other department store competitors have maybe not been as forward-thinking as we have. Our heritage and our ethos of our company is really based on that. So I think like you mentioned, what we're trying to capitalize on is adding that element. On Mr. Porter or any of the other .coms, you can read about designers, but we're offering the experience. You can come in and actually meet the designer. And all of the personalization, overall, I think that's probably the biggest trend or the biggest draw for any brick and mortar today is offering personalization. Because in this day and age, everything is mass produced, like I said, or you can get everything anywhere. So exclusivity, making it my own, that's what we're trying to capitalize on in an interpersonal element.
Okay, and one more retailer perspective, and then I want to talk about trade show experiences.
Yeah, just building on that, on being innovative, I think it's very important to evolve, but there's a delicate balance between evolving and staying true to yourself and being authentic. And you need to communicate that to your customers. On top of that, there's kind of a layer of providing a product or an experience that a customer wants kind of beyond reason, because as Nick had said multiple times today, you can get product anywhere. It's available. Just Google it and find it, and find it for the cheapest price and go get it. You need to make people want you, make people want your product. We've seen that with Apple, especially in the last 20 years. You could get a computer from anyone in the world, you get a cell phone from anyone in the world, but when you go to the Apple store, it's a special experience. You feel great. The store looks great, you want to be there, and they keep you on your toes, and they keep you wanting to come back. So you kind of have to emulate that a little bit. That's very important. Yeah.
Sharifa, Liberty Fairs is known for the experiences, not just the trade show. You guys always have collaborations with photographers, lots of stuff going on in the middle of the show there. How has that come into play for you as a team in planning your shows each season?
Every season changes from season to season, and we drive the team crazy with the kind of concepts and ideas we come up with. But we always make a joke in the office, a trade show is a trade show is a trade show. Mm-hmm. All the trade shows could be the same, and how do we differentiate ourselves is by evolving and doing things differently. So we try to make it better for the retailer experience and the brand experience to come to our show, to make them want to come to our show for a reason and a purpose, not to just sell goods, but to find and discover other things that they can partner together on. We do little things. It's just having a store in LA and trying to have them do pop-up spaces each season. We understand that we're living in a different world, whereas the consumer is very valuable, and we want to put those brands in front of the consumer as much as we can. So we want to help the brands, and we want to help the retailers be more comfortable, as in just partnering with other trade shows to kind of get them to get together, and that they can use one pass to get access to all shows. It's just something that we try to do to make things easier. So it's very simple.
Great, we have a few more minutes left. I want you guys to tell me, when you leave at the end of the day, you leave the office, you leave the store, what defines a good day? What's a good day for you? And let's build on to that since we're kind of closing in time. Tell me, or tell everyone here, what you're very excited about in our little community of the industry going forward. So what makes a good day? What are you pumped about going forward? Start with Kirby. Kirby, I know you're excited.
Well, what excites me is, as small as it sounds, it excites me to do shows and to do like fashion week shows and stuff like that. I feel like those are those 2 times a year is when I really get to like really make a statement, and I try not to waste the opportunity by doing something like vain and something that's going to go over people's heads. So I try to like hit people in the heart, and that's what I'm always looking forward to. Every 6 months. So
it's awesome.
We're going backwards. Just kidding. What makes a good day for me? So at Mr. Porter, we have this process where, I'm going to give you a little bit of insider scoop. This process where I go with my stylist along the line and I check every single outfit. And I make edits. I say, these shoes will not work. Let's change this tie. Let's add a belt. This needs a blazer. This needs a bag. If I can go through an outfit check twice a day, which it happens twice a day, if I can go through an outfit check twice a day, and if I only have like one change, it's a good day. It's a wonderful day.
It's a very specific good day.
Yes.
Nick, what about you?
I mean, not to sound corny, but truthfully, the reason I love working in the department store space and having a physical space is those days where I can end the day on the floor and actually see a customer pick up something that I went into the market in, or even part of my job is actual private label development, something that I came up with, sourced the product, did everything, and actually watched them step out of the store having made the purchase with a smile. With the smile is also really important. But yeah, that's when you know that you've done something really positive, and it's really exciting, and it's, keeps me up every day, excited.
Great.
I think something that kind of keeps me going and kind of, makes me have a great day is when I can take a look at myself in the mirror and objectively state that I got better at something, no matter how small or large that day. It could be, the way a mannequin is presented on the floor. It could be the way that, a client was spoken to. My dad always said, take pride in your work, and if you're going to dig ditches, be the best ditch digger in the world, that sort of thing. And just strive for excellence, get better at something every day. And if you can look at yourself and say, I got better at something, that was a good day.
So, there's 2 things that make my day. Basically, when I get a brand in that, we never thought we'd get in, or, we've been working on for a very, very long time. And then also we have our meetings on Monday. Monday is like my exciting day because the whole team comes together and sit down at a table and discuss what's going on throughout the day or the week or what's happening within the season. And it's just that form of everyone coming together. Like, that makes my day. I get excited over that, and I'm always excited to do that meeting, so.
Well, you all made today a very good day. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you to the Menswear panel. All right, so we're coming to the final part of the morning. Our last panel is Art and Science in the Creative World. This panel looks at how data is being used to push creativity forward. On the panel, we have Elaine Sugimura, CEO of Leapskin, Karen Moon, CEO of Trendalytics, Amy Tran, digital lead at Le Labo Fragrances. Okay, here we go. Jessica Deverett, VP of Merchandising at Cole Haan, and the panel is going to be moderated by Lily Borelovich, who you've seen on stage a few times today, our President and Chief Creative Officer of Fashion Snoops.
So, how's everybody? Last panel, we're going to make it really great for all of you that stayed behind. I really wanted to moderate this panel because I'm very passionate about this topic, and since we put the event together, I get to choose whatever we want. So first of all, Karen supported us in putting this panel together. Karen from Trendalytics, so thank you for your support and bringing these amazing women together. I'm passionate about this topic of data and this new creative conversation for many reasons, and myself and I've had a conversation with these ladies, and I think you'll love this topic as well after they share their personal stories. I'm passionate about it because there's a push and pull at the moment of data use. So in our reality, and I kind of sit in the middle of the creative and also running the company, so I'm constantly, balancing. And a lot of the conversations today shared about that, how it's a balance between creativity but also something that sells. I am clear, and I've had so many great conversations with anyone within the company, whether it's a designer, a merchandiser, a marketer, display, whoever they may be. We are all committed to creating product that sells. At the end of the day, no one's sitting in any role coming up with ideas that they hope will lay on the shelf forever. And data is such a great tool for that. However, I think until we figure out this perfect mix of how data could be used in the push of creativity and not the pull away from creativity, I think that's when we'll crack the code of the gold mine that we're sitting on and the information that's available to us, because when, many years ago when I was creating and designing, it wasn't available, so you were doing it in the dark in some way. So I want to start with that question, how can data support the creative vision and not diminish it, and you ladies take it from here in your experience.
Sure, I'll take it. So in merchandising, a critical part of our role is to align the business needs, the sales plan with the creative vision, or more realistically, to align the creative vision to the business needs and the sales plan. And data is an absolutely instrumental part of it. Historically, the challenge had been that all data was backward-looking, and so you had very much a push-pull of a very backward-looking historical bookings, sales, sell-through performance, but that, as one of the prior panelists said, could really keep you looking backwards and very last year-itis, versus a designer's gut intuition, trend forecast, looking forward. I think the world of data is evolving with the worlds of social, Google. Trendalytics has been a great tool bringing those together that actually lets merchants understand what's happening real time now and create more of a quantitative assessment of where the market's trending. And that's really been an invaluable tool for helping to steer our creatives to the most powerful line we can.
I think with my background, so I've been in the industry for just over 30 years, so I'm going to give away my age a bit. Most of these guys on the panel probably can be my kids. So, part of my experience in the last, since I've worked with brands from Gucci to Avianis, which I launched the subsidiary here, to working now as I'm actually the CEO of the board for Libeskind Berlin. So I'm working with a German company, and most of you probably know that when you're working with an international-based company, they're coming into the U.S. trying to figure out how to make a business happen. And so, I was consulting prior to coming to this organization, and I had to really look at data, and I needed to understand what the data was saying at every component. It wasn't just about product. It was about relationships. It was about the people that were hired. It was where were we going to take this business to land it into a place where we were going to recover from the number of losses that occurred over the years. So interestingly enough, I've been there for 18 months, met with the Trendalytics team, which was one of the first data teams that came in over a period of time to sort of explain how we could use that data more towards social. I had to reinvent myself, right? 30 years in industry, I grew up in a brick and mortar type of business. And I would say to most of the students here that one of the things you have to keep doing is educate yourself and understand how data plays with still communicating and still driving then an end product, whatever it is. And so my role isn't to come in and change the design, it's to give design in Germany a platform of information that my team puts together here so that they can then marry that to what they're doing for a global sort of launch. And it's been difficult. It hasn't been easy. One of the things that I think we've learned through all of this is data still requires speaking to one another. It still requires some level of traditional thinking, and you have to marry those two things. So if you can constantly take data and apply that to every part of your business and every department of the business, I think success will be had, because we're still in a world here in the US especially where the celebrity obsessed culture, we look at social. I have an amazing marketing manager working for me now who drove me to this panel and said, you need to speak about what you've learned, because I've been trying to teach her and she's teaching me, quite frankly. I don't know if I would have signed up with Trendalytics initially, but she kind of gave me the compass of where we needed to go, because between where she is as Generation X and where I am, it's an important piece to understand as you're leading companies and you're leading people. So that's been a big part of how data sort of shaped my career thus far. And so I would encourage everybody to continue educating, because I think it's important.
I guess I want to add to that, just to give a little bit of background. So I love this question because this is really at the core of why we started our company. And just to give you a little bit of background, there's tons of information that all these women have in their companies. What we bring that's slightly different is we're bringing external information and giving that to them in real time, like instantly, around how the consumer might interact with their brands directly through their channels, their wholesale partners, their influencer channels. So we monitor thousands of profiles across social media, Instagram, Facebook, etc. We monitor like 5,000 searches on Google and also track around 19 million SKUs. So it's kind of like this whole thing, but one of the things that's really core to our mission is I've worked in really big companies and going at all different phases, like super high growth, to like spotting what's the next big thing that we're going to invest in and actually create from the ground up, to like turnarounds. And the biggest kind of need that I saw in this was actually there's a ton of data. It exists in different places and the data teams have plenty of that, but like who's actually fostering creative decisions and actually helping to back it up. Intuition never goes away. The core of merchandising never goes away, but the toughest times I had in my businesses is when I knew I was right, I could see all the celebrities were wearing, what was in the stores, and all of that, and you didn't have numbers to show around it. And I think in this environment, retailers it's easier to play it safe, and this is when, you know, the industry is declining, there's more and more bankruptcies, and how do you build a sustainable business? But at the end of the day, you have to push the envelope. I think Gucci is a great example of this. They took a real big risk with the creative director, and it's totally changing the landscape and kind of putting them back on the mix. So how do you take these innovative risks and foster creativity? And that's kind of, I think, really important in all of our businesses as we look at how we use data, and I think that's an incredible responsibility we all have.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. We keep referring to this new creative as part scientist, part artist, and I think that's what's really true here, because I know for me, when I wear the designer role and coming into a company, I always want some sort of a frame to hold the creativity. So to me, being supported by a team that can provide numbers that just give you that frame that then you can sit and be creative in is the perfect mix. So I want to speak to what is your experience of data in the hands of a creative and then data in the hands of a marketer or a merchant, and how does it differ?
We're at a conference called The New Creative, and I think that the idea of creatives have changed and evolved over time. Creatives are no longer just the designers. They're no longer just, photographers and people doing really artistic things. I think that everyone in business has to be somewhat creative, and you have no budgets and you have to make campaigns happen, you have to make a website happen, and you have to be pretty creative about it. And so I think that data actually allows for us to make the safest bets with our limited budgets. It also allows us to pick the best campaign images, pick the best email blast to send out. So all of that validates your choices before you actually spend the dollars.
Okay, so from the perspective of our business as a wholesaler, I think that what we try to do is balance in marketing, because that's the piece that I carry here, because design is held in Berlin, is to sit with the marketing manager, and we sit and we talk about, what's on the platform right now. What can we do to take the data to enrich that ROI to the next level? Because oftentimes we found that we would create all these wonderful ideas as a team and then not really have a measurement at the end, because it's a fast and furious place in the office. People are constantly moving to the next thing when one event is done. What we try to do now is, I'm creating a place in the office where we can sit for 15, 20 minutes and re-examine everything that we're doing to understand what that ROI is. Because at the end of the day, the new creative that's going to come can only be based on that history. And I think that's the piece that I've been watching the team over the last several months, where we are growing so fast in one area that we kind of forget that. And so now when we are grouping back, and we just brought on an e-commerce manager, we now have created these pilot teams where we're sitting down and actually really analyzing them. It's no longer an email where everyone can say, thank you for sending me the email, what's attached to it, and what does it say to you? And how are you going to improve that next vision and that next piece that you're going to create for the brand that's going to be important for the ROI? Because at the end of the day, we all have to meet a budget, and we have to meet a P&L. So, I listened to some of the folks earlier, and I love the entrepreneurial spirit, because that's basically where I love to sit too. But at the end of the day, when you're responsible for a team and you're responsible for a business and product that you have to sell, and you need to meet an EBIT that is positive rather than negative, I have to tell you, really quickly, some of these things go out the door. So that's something that we sort of challenge each other with. I sit with the team. It's not that I'm their CEO and their boss. I'm part of the team, and I try to mentor them to that next place. And so far, it seems to be working. And I've got my marketing manager here, so hopefully she's hearing me a bit too.
Take it forward. I think collaboration, I'll let you speak in a second. I think everyone said I think collaboration was said on every panel. And that is at the core of everything in some way, because I know there's a big difference between providing the numbers when the initial conceptual thinking is happening, and a difference when providing the numbers once the creative process has been done. And that's very painful. So I brought these ideas to the table, and then the person with data numbers says, no more midi skirts, they're not selling, as opposed to having that conversation earlier on in the process where the designer sits in the knowing before they begin to design the collection. And that's the collaboration that I'm hoping more and more companies will take on, because it is valuable and it is gold if you're using and wiring it through the process in a very collaborative way, as opposed to a push and pull that's has been happening.
I guess I was going to say something quite similar, in the sense that you talk about data in the hands of a merchant or data in the hands of a designer, but where data is most helpful is where it's shared and where it becomes the foundation of a conversation. It is a tool for taking emotion out of some conversations. And whether the data is shared at the beginning or in the middle, you're all in it together. You're all trying to run a business and to create a line that's really going to be powerful when you show it to retailers and when you show it to consumers. So, data, I think, really informs that push-pull between merchandising and design. At Cole Haan, we like to say that the greatest freedom is in a well-drafted brief. And so, data is an incredibly powerful tool for creating a brief, or an opportunity that everyone understands. And it's not someone's opinion who authored it. There's a real reason for its being in the context of the business. Similarly, at the point you make, the conversations, you're at your final moment to make change. Those are the most painful conversations. And so having the data, having tools, closer to market tools, are really, we have found, the best way to smooth those conversations, to not make them emotional conversations. Someone likes it, someone doesn't, but the business situation has changed, the business opportunity changed, and how are we as a team going to address it? And that's really the power of data to bring people together.
Yeah, as ammunition. Used as ammunition. I want to stop for a second and now address, because we've been talking about data, but I want to hand it over to Karen and some of you ladies to add. can you spell it out? Because we're assuming everybody in the room understands what data we're talking about, but can you simply spell out what's currently available and how it's used? So just the examples of data that's being utilized.
Yeah, so I can speak from our perspective and what we do with our platform, but we think of as simply as like big data for fashion. So we're monitoring what's happening in the fashion industry, the ecosystem of all the different influencers, bloggers, the brands, thousands of retailers and publishers, and we're organizing billions of images ranked by popularity, how many times you're searching for skinny jeans versus boyfriend jeans, and how many products are out there. Are they oversaturated? Are they all on markdown? Or is it kind of doing well and like, is it at the high end or the low end? So we take all of this stuff, which is a lot of numbers and data, but we pull it together so it's easy. So we kind of take it to the next step and say like, what would Elaine want to see? What would Jessica want to see? And we think about our end user, and it's more about not just throwing a lot of stuff at them, but how do we turn numbers to insights that they may want to use. And so what we do is we organize all of our data by product. So at the end of the day, there's a ton of different platforms out there that are measuring ad campaigns, but it really starts with merchandise and branding and creative materials. And so we really look at the images, like what types of images are working, what's resonating, and organize it all by different product categories, like pants, classifications, silhouettes, materials, and SKUs.
It's interesting with Trendalytics, what happened for us as a wholesaler, aside from looking at it from a marketing perspective and where Monica uses it towards the bloggers and what can we afford, we obviously can't afford Ami Song and Song of Style or Chiara. So there's things that we use within that information that comes back that we sort of deduce down and we say, okay, what's the right person for us? But beyond that, on a wholesale side, the sales team uses it for a structure where we take a look and we can see some of our partners that are out there and they may take a markdown on something that we don't know about, or they're constantly doing it because if you're working with the behemoth and the .com, and I don't need to say who they are, they don't sign a mapping policy. So when you look at things like that, but there's still someone you need to trade with, how do we use that data to support our business so it doesn't affect our full price business, and how do we get the best margin out of these goods? So it's been interesting to take the data. When we first thought it was going to just help us with the design team from a trend level, it's actually helped us manage the full business. So, thank you very much. It's been one of the best things that we've brought on board as of recent, so thank you.
And just, can you ladies, one of you just clarify, so there's social chatter, and then there's search for product on actual shopping sites. We swim in the water of, we know that we think everybody gets it, but can you even more clearly just the buckets of information that's available?
On Trendalytics specifically or in the world? So
it's external and internal, which is a topic.
Sure. So, I think that is one thing that's so important is internal data. So there are two pools of data. There's internal data, and that's going to be your own sales data. So if you're a wholesaler, how much your accounts bought, and then whether you're a vertical retailer or a wholesale, what sold through. How profitable was it? So how much markdown did you have to take? And therefore, ultimately, how much money did you make off the products? Then there's also external data out there. So there's NPD, which pulls data from, registered data from a lot of the wholesale accounts and gives you a very backward-looking view, but a very accurate view of what your competitors are selling. Then there are emerging tools like Trendalytics, which are really helping us to capture real-time information like Instagram posts, Facebook posts, the most liked images by brands, Google searches, and one of the things that they do so well that we've found really powerful is if you put in something like booty, because I work in shoes, then what will come up is the sub-classifications that people actually are searching for. So Western booty, ankle booty, fringe booty, open toe booty. So you can really start to understand what consumers are pushing for as opposed to kind of what retail accounts are buying. Then there's also less quantitative data. So there are trend agencies like your WGSN. There are more marketing-driven agencies like the Cassandra Report. So there are multiple sources of data, both quantitative and quantitative, so much such that the challenge is not getting the data, but it's actually synthesizing it, interpreting it, and identifying the relevant insights to driving your own business.
Thank you. Elaine, I wanted you to talk about kind of because I love what you shared with me yesterday. There's students here that are entering the field, and you talked about what's needed out there and what you look for in the new creative.
Yeah, I've interviewed a lot of people in the last 17 years being a CEO in different businesses. And, today, I look back and I look at, first of all, just my own career and, what did I have to do to reinvent myself? Because I have a lot of colleagues that are about my age and, have been in the industry, and it's hard to reinvent if you haven't done it already. So one of the things I did personally was I made a decision about 7 years ago to partner with somebody in the industry that I felt that I didn't have a whole lot of information on, which was .com and the whole digital space. Because I knew I would be a fast learner. I didn't have time to go back to school. I was running businesses. So at that point, I partnered with a CFO who also set up BN.com when it happened and took it to $750 million and said, okay, give me a crash course. We actually restructured businesses together in the last 6 years. He's my CFO today, and he runs our .com, and he's helping the organization as a whole in Germany. And so one of the things I'll tell you is you have to keep reinventing yourself. The technology today is so fast, and what you all know versus what I learned coming out of college is two different things. And if I can share one thing is keep educating yourself, understand what the data is telling you, be decisive about what you want to do. If you're going to be a designer and you're going to be a creative, you need to understand Excel. You have to have some level of science, because I had a designer who, number one, in all of my career, I will still say she's one of the best creatives that I ever worked with. And I would hire her again, but I know if I hire her, I need to center her around people who can do the analytics, because she didn't grow up in that time. Could she have spent the time doing that? But that's just not who she is. Today, I would probably never hire a person like that if knowing where we have to go, they have to be able to analyze the business themselves and be able to take the data that's being given to them by the merchant team, such as what Jessica does over at Cole Haan, and make decisions on what things she's going to bring out to or he or she will bring to the next collection. So continue to learn, find mentors in the industry. I took 25 interviews before I hired our marketing manager. Why? Because when I first walked into Liebeskin, first of all, I do wear black most of the time. It's easy to travel when you travel as much as I do. But at the end of the day, I knew I needed somebody that could come in and be the brand, understand the brand, change our direction. She was the right generation to come in to do this. And she's taught me a huge amount about, where our brand needs to go. And I myself have changed a bit about how I think. I feel like I'm a bit younger. I hang with a lot of kids that are my kids' age. It's exciting. So keep that pulse and never settle. And I think if you can do that, education is a big part of no matter where you are. Take that evening class, take the weekend class, do it online. Continue learning as you walk out of here, because, folks like myself who are now, my job today is mentoring. I'm going to be the latter part of my career. I'm moving out, and I want to leave a business to these folks that I'm training now to be the next CEOs and the next, senior VPs and the next, Karens of the world and Jessicas of the world. So, I hope that you guys will take that to heart. And if anyone wants to know my name and wants a mentor, I'm more than happy to do that. I love doing that. And, keep going. And good luck.
I just want to add to that. I think what's really exciting about joining the industry now is that you don't have to be like a veteran forever. Like, because the technologies are changing so fast, you can actually become an expert pretty quickly. Probably a better expert at Snapchat and some of these other things. And I think Amy is actually a great example of choosing the right moves at the right times. Like, launching e-commerce with Alexander Wang, running it for Reese. And so I think she's one that I've always admired in terms of the moves she's made in launching e-commerce for a bunch of brands. So I thought it would be cool if you could chat a little bit about that.
Sure. So I have made a lot of moves in my career.
The right ones.
In hindsight, yes. At the time, it was just kind of, it wasn't calculated, but I just went with my intuition at all times. So, I started out in this industry in big luxury houses. My first internship ever was at Hermes, and then I went to Chanel. And then I realized I don't really want to do big fashion houses. I wanted something more entrepreneurial. So then I went into PR, which was a very brief encounter. And then I just ended up in e-commerce, and it was like one of the best things to have ever happened to me. It was a marrying of business, it was a marrying of creativity. It was still relatively new to the industry. I ended up at Alexander Wang as a half receptionist, half e-commerce person, and just kind of somehow at 24 launched Alexander Wang in 50 countries. From there, I went on to work for Reese.com, and then now I'm relaunching a site with Le Labo. So a lot of different moves, but I moved really quickly, and it was because I wanted to learn. And I also was one of the few people who knew how to use Excel, so that helped out a bit. But you just have to really stay curious. You have to take those night classes, like she said, it's so important. Like, take those general assembly classes, understand what UX is, understand how data works in a website. Understanding how to be an Instagram star is great, but if you don't know how to monetize it, it doesn't do anything for you. So, I take into consideration what everyone has said, and it's so true.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to wrap up with this last question, and there's always the battle of how do you track something that hasn't been created yet? I always say, how do you test something you don't push out, right? You can't. Can you share, maybe just one of you or two of you, as we wrap up, an example of how you actually use data to launch a new idea, or how it pushed a new idea forward? How does it actually push innovation? Because yes, we could know what people are looking for, but how do you stand behind an idea that hasn't been out there and people don't know to search for it?
I can speak to that. So I'm on the side, sometimes an investor too. Also, back in the day, I used to launch new retail concepts. So when I was putting capital, significant amount of capital into new companies or seeing their growth, it was really around the possibilities. So when I was at the Gap over 10 years ago, a long time ago, one of the things we looked at was the activewear space. And so at that time, easy to look back now, but in 2004, Lululemon was 24 stores. There was Lucy, and there weren't that many places. And so what we thought was really interesting is we did look at data. We looked at MPD, and we said what's so fascinating is the secular trends are growing. So it's kind of mapping these pieces together. And what we thought is okay, the growth, health and wellness is not going away. Fitness and healthy living is kind of always going to be around. But what we looked at is and this is all public, so it's fine, but it's what we looked at is, where are women shopping today? What are the options that are fashionable? And in 2005, there weren't many. And we also said women love to shop, and they're mostly shopping in the, online or, in the specialty retail channel. But if you look at all the sales and where all the brands were, they were in Dick's Sporting Goods or this little crappy place in one of the department stores. So when you pull the pieces together, even though it doesn't exist yet per se, it's about pulling a story together that's cohesive, that gets people to listen to you. And I think at that time, I was also very young, 24, I'm how do you get the CEO of a $15 billion company to pay attention? You have to have some numbers behind it. And so I think it's around crafting a story that makes sense.
That's great. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up, and these amazing people have been here this full morning. Thank you for your precious, wise, thank you for sharing this panel with us.
Thank you.
And I'm going to use this opportunity to wrap up the day and first of all say thank you to all of you for joining us. It's been an incredible journey of putting it together and sitting through some of the panel and listening to all of the conversation. And I made one request of all the speakers: be personal, share yourself personally, bring yourself to the conversation. Would you agree that they all did that today? Absolutely. They showed up, they shared themselves, and I think we're all walking out with a lot of insight and wisdom. I know I am. I want to say thank you to Nancy for being an ally in this project. I also want to say thank you to a few of the FIT team, and that is Greta, Lana, Tabitha, Jennifer. Can you come up? We just want to say thank you and give you some flowers. Please share this. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, students, faculty, and industry.